Hidden across the world are tombs and relics, shrouded in fear and legend, places where curiosity has met deadly consequences. From lost pharaohs to ancient priestesses, explorers who dared to disturb these resting places often vanished or returned with stories that defy explanation. Strange symbols, unexplained phenomena, and whispers of curses surround each discovery, creating a chilling tapestry of history's most haunted secrets. This video uncovers the darkest corners of these cursed mysteries, revealing the chilling accounts of those who confronted forces beyond comprehension. Every story challenges what we think we know about life, death, and the consequences of disturbing what was never meant to be found. Step carefully into a world where the past refuses to stay buried. The tomb that killed all 7 people who opened it. The story began in 1907 in the shifting sands of Luxor, Egypt, where a small team of British archaeologists uncovered what they believed to be a forgotten noble's tomb near the Valley of the King. It was not marked by any royal insignia, yet its entrance was guarded by faded carvings that seemed to warn intruders away. Locals refused to approach it, speaking of an older curse that predated even the pharaohs. The team, led by a confident Egyptologist named Arthur Craven, dismissed the warnings as superstition, but the excavation notes that survived paint a picture of unease from the very first day. The entrance was blocked by heavy limestone and sealed with resin, a method meant to last for eternity. When the workers finally broke through, they were hit by an overpowering stench, though no organic remains were visible. The air inside was unusually warm, thick, and almost damp despite the desert heat. They cleared the passage, revealing a narrow corridor decorated with symbols none could translate. Among them was an image of 7 figures kneeling before a coffin, their eyes hollow and mouths open as if in silent screams. One of the workers refused to continue after seeing it. Inside, they found a single chamber, untouched by robbers or time. At its center rested a black basalt sarcophagus, unlike any other discovered in the region. It bore no name, no hieroglyphic prayers, only a circular engraving on the lid that none of them could interpret. The team took photographs, recorded sketches, and began the process of lifting the lid. When it finally opened, a chill swept through the room, despite the oppressive heat outside. Within lay a remarkably preserved body, its wrappings stained with an odd reddish tint. Around the body were small obsidian figures positioned with precision, all facing outward, as if meant to protect the world from whatever lay inside. The first tragedy came 2 days later. Arthur Craven, the team's leader, was found lifeless in his tent. His cause of death was recorded as sudden heart failure, though he had been a healthy man in his 40s. His journal, found beside him, contained frantic, disjointed notes about voices in the dark and the sensation of being watched. The team considered halting the work, but the funding and prestige tied to their discovery kept them in the field. They sealed the chamber once more and continued cataloguing artifacts. Within a week, 2 more members died under equally strange circumstances, one from a fever that no doctor could diagnose, the other from a fall down a shallow ravine after claiming he saw someone walking where no footprints remained. By the end of the excavation season, local newspapers were already whispering about a new pharaoh's curse. The remaining team members denied it, insisting the deaths were a coincidence, but records show that none of them ever returned to Egypt. The artifacts were shipped to London for study, arriving at the British Museum later that same year. During transport, another worker fell ill and died before reaching the port. The sarcophagus was placed in storage, away from public view, while experts debated its origins. The basalt was unlike the stone used in nearby tombs, and the style of carving seemed to belong to no known dynasty. Over the next 2 years, the curse's reach appeared to stretch far beyond Luxor. One curator who handled the sarcophagus developed severe respiratory failure and died within days. Another, who ordered tests on the resin used to seal the tomb, was struck by a sudden paralysis that left him unable to speak. When a journalist attempted to trace the surviving members of the original expedition, he discovered that every one of them, 7 in total, had died in unexplained or violent ways within just 4 years of breaking the seal. Their deaths spanned 3 countries, none connected by anything other than that single tomb. The Egyptian authorities, disturbed by growing rumours, requested that the coffin be returned to Luxor in 1911. The British Museum, eager to quell public fear, agreed. During the transfer, a small fire broke out in the cargo hold of the ship, destroying part of the manifest but leaving the sarcophagus untouched. When it arrived in Egypt, officials chose not to reopen it, sealing it instead in a private chamber within the Luxor Museum, where it remains off-limits to visitors. The exact location of the tomb that first housed it was lost when desert winds reclaimed the excavation site, burying it once more beneath layers of drifting sand. And somewhere beneath the drifting sands of Luxor, the tomb waits, patient and untouched, for another to open it. Tutankhamun's tomb and the pharaoh's revenge. In November 1922, the sands of Egypt's Valley of the Kings shifted just enough to expose a step leading downward, marking the beginning of one of the most extraordinary discoveries in history. Howard Carter and his team, funded by Lord Carnarvon, had spent years searching for the elusive resting place of the boy king Tutankhamun. When Carter pressed his face to a small opening in the sealed doorway and glimpsed what lay beyond, his quiet words, "Yes, wonderful things," marked the rebirth of a forgotten pharaoh, and some would say the awakening of a curse. Silence lingered in the chamber after the seal was broken, the kind of silence that carries a presence. The stale air, trapped for over 3,000 years, drifted into the light for the first time since antiquity. The walls were covered in vibrant paintings that seemed to shimmer under the flicker of torchlight, and rows of golden relics stood untouched by time. Those present would later speak of an unnatural heaviness that filled the air, an unspoken tension that made every breath feel borrowed. Those who first entered the tomb found themselves surrounded by unimaginable wealth. Gold chariots, alabaster statues, and intricate jewelry lay scattered in perfect chaos, preserved as if the young king's attendants had just stepped away. Yet beneath the awe was an undercurrent of unease. The air was thick with resin and decay, and the faint odour of something ancient hung above the treasures. Carter himself maintained his composure, carefully cataloguing each artifact, but to the workers and onlookers, it seemed that the tomb's stillness was watching them. As news of the discovery spread across the world, fascination turned to obsession. Newspapers printed bold headlines about the pharaoh's curse, and tales of doom began to swirl. The idea that the tomb had been protected by a supernatural force captured the imagination of millions. Reporters gathered at the site, each hoping to glimpse both history and mystery. Ancient hieroglyphs carved into the walls, warning that death would come on swift wings to those who disturbed the king, were repeated endlessly in print, feeding a sense of dread that only grew stronger with each passing week. When Lord Carnarvon died in April 1923, barely 5 months after the tomb was opened, the curse gained its first victim in the public eye. The cause, officially, was an infected mosquito bite that turned septic, yet the circumstances felt uncanny. At the exact moment of his death in Cairo, the lights in the city reportedly went out. In England, his dog was said to have let out a terrible howl before collapsing. To many, these coincidences were enough to convince them that the pharaoh had claimed his first revenge. Scientists and skeptics dismissed the notion of a curse, calling it a coincidence, but unease crept even among the rational. Within a few years, several other individuals connected to the tomb's opening met early deaths. George Gould, a wealthy visitor to the site, died of fever soon after entering the chamber. Arthur Mace, a member of Carter's team, fell ill and never recovered. Others succumbed to strange infections or sudden ailments, and though Carter himself lived for years afterward, whispers followed him until his own death in 1939. The golden mask of Tutankhamun, perhaps the most iconic treasure ever unearthed, became the silent face of the mystery. Every curve of its design reflected divine craftsmanship, yet many who gazed into its expressionless eyes described a strange discomfort, as if the boy king's gaze had not lost its power through centuries of rest. In museums and exhibitions, the mask drew enormous crowds, but tales of accidents, illnesses, and unexplained misfortunes followed wherever it travelled. Within a decade of the tomb's opening, the legend of the pharaoh's revenge had become inseparable from the discovery itself. Even the skeptics who mocked the curse could not deny its persistence. Journalists revisited the deaths, connecting details that fit too neatly to ignore. The idea that something beyond human understanding lingered within the tomb refused to fade. In every retelling, the boy king's resting place seemed less like a burial site and more like a warning. Modern studies have attempted to explain the curse through science. Experts proposed that toxic mold spores or ancient bacteria within the sealed chamber might have caused deadly respiratory infections to those exposed. The theory, while logical, has never accounted for the timing and selection of its victims. Hundreds entered and handled the artifacts over the years, yet the deaths clustered only among the first who had disturbed the seal. Such patterns kept the mystery alive, blurring the line between myth and coincidence. Even now, more than a century later, the curse of Tutankhamun's tomb continues to echo through history, its shadows stretching far beyond the sands of the Valley of the Kings. Every retelling draws new listeners who wonder whether the pharaoh's warning was mere superstition or a truth no science can undo. And under the eternal desert sun, Tutankhamun's spirit seems to wait, unblinking, for those bold enough to doubt him. The unopened tomb beneath Saqqara. To the south of Cairo stretches the necropolis of Saqqara, a vast landscape of stone and sand that has watched over Egypt's dead for more than 4,000 years. The step pyramid of Djoser rises at its heart, surrounded by hidden corridors, ancient tombs, and chambers lost to time. It is a place where discovery and mystery coexist, where every excavation deepens rather than answers the questions of Egypt's past. Generations of explorers have searched Saqqara's shifting terrain, unearthing treasures from dynasties long erased from memory. The deeper they dig, the more complex the site reveals itself to be, a labyrinth of passageways extending far below the surface, linking tombs from different eras in a silent network of the dead. Even with modern technology, parts of this necropolis remain uncharted, guarded by layers of limestone and clay that resist intrusion. During a 2018 excavation led by Egyptian archaeologists, a sealed shaft was found hidden within a cluster of smaller burial chambers. The passage was narrow, descending into darkness, and lined with smooth stone that reflected faint light like glass. It ended at a carved doorway, unlike any previously discovered in the area, its surface untouched and its seal perfectly preserved. The markings above it were carved with mathematical precision, but none matched known hieroglyphic patterns. The chamber's limestone walls caught the dim glow of lamps, revealing colours that had survived 3 millennia without fading. Patterns of blue, gold, and red depicted unfamiliar figures, human forms, with elongated skulls and outstretched arms whose meanings remain unconfirmed. Each line seemed deliberate, as though designed to guide or ward off whoever approached. The air inside the shaft was stale, yet strangely still, carrying a quiet that pressed against the skin. Scholars noted that the doorway bore no traces of tampering. There were no cracks, no signs of previous entry, not even the faint scratches that often mark ancient robbery attempts. To some, that untouched seal was more telling than any treasure it might conceal. For centuries, Saqqara has yielded tombs that were plundered in antiquity, yet this one appeared to have evaded both man and nature. Whatever rested behind that door had remained undisturbed since the earliest days of Egyptian civilization. A still chill filled the narrow passage, clinging to the walls like a presence. Instruments recorded the drop in temperature as workers approached the sealed door, though the cause could not be traced. The air itself seemed heavier, thick with a scent of minerals and something metallic, almost electric. When they attempted to measure internal pressure within the sealed chamber, the readings fluctuated unpredictably, as though the void behind the wall pulsed faintly on its own. Acoustic equipment detected faint, rhythmic vibrations, repeating every few minutes with no identifiable source. The patterns did not match machinery or external noise, leading to brief speculation that movement existed within the chamber itself. excavation paused immediately. Out of caution, officials ordered the shaft closed until further analysis could be conducted, sealing the entry once again with wooden supports and heavy coverings. Elsewhere across Saqqara, other discoveries continued: colourful sarcophagi, animal mummies, and burial shafts, revealing priests and nobles of forgotten names. Yet the sealed tomb near the southern ridge remained untouched, its mystery deepening with each passing season. Even when other finds made international headlines, quiet attention persisted on the unopened door, where sensors still registered subtle changes in vibration and temperature. Authorities debated the ethics of disturbing it. Some argued that it must remain sealed, that opening it might damage delicate materials or collapse the shaft entirely. Others insisted that its preservation was a rare opportunity to study ancient construction untouched by looters or the modern world. International teams proposed endoscopic exploration, yet permission was repeatedly delayed, leaving the tomb in darkness once more. Speculation grew among researchers and locals alike. Some believed the chamber belonged to a high-ranking priest from the early dynastic period, buried with rituals meant to protect his resting place from intrusion. Others suggested it could be part of a larger, undiscovered network that predates even the Step Pyramid. What united all opinions was uncertainty. Every attempt to interpret the symbols or structural layout led to contradictions, as if the tomb's very design defied comprehension. Years passed, and the site remained under guarded silence. Sandstorms shifted across the plateau, covering and uncovering fragments of ancient walls. Yet the sealed doorway stood unchanged. Occasionally, teams returned to take fresh readings, each time reporting the same strange pulse, faint but consistent. The chamber's location was mapped, documented, and left untouched once again, a mystery preserved by decision rather than decay. Still sealed and untouched, under the pale Egyptian sky, the tomb waits, silent and unyielding, holding its secret in the heart of Saqqara. The screaming mummy of Deir el-Bahari. When the linen was first unwrapped, silence filled the chamber. The air in the Cairo Museum's restoration room hung heavy, as if even the walls were reluctant to witness what lay before them. A face emerged from the wrappings, its mouth stretched wide in an eternal cry, its features twisted into pure agony. Those who stood near it said the expression seemed alive, as though frozen at the peak of unbearable pain. No ceremonial adornment, no golden mask, no signs of honor, only a human face caught mid-scream, preserved for eternity. The expression that greeted the archaeologists defied explanation. This was not the tranquil visage usually seen among royal mummies. His mouth gaped open as if his final breath had never escaped. The skin, darkened with resin, pulled tight across his skull, and the position of his limbs showed no trace of reverence. He looked more like a victim than a king. Whispers soon spread that this was no ordinary mummy, that his death had not been one of peace, and that the silence in the room was not one of awe, but of unease. Years of study could not soften the image of a man caught mid-scream. Scholars returned to his body again and again, hoping to find a logical reason behind his tortured appearance. The mummy, catalogued as Unknown Man E, seemed to taunt every attempt to explain him. Some believed the contorted mouth was a natural result of decomposition, while others insisted it was something more deliberate, a punishment etched into death itself. Each theory deepened, rather than dispelled the mystery surrounding him. Forensic teams found his jaw forced open, the body contorted unnaturally. Unlike the traditional care given to royal mummifications, his body had been hurriedly wrapped and sealed. There were no inscriptions, no ornaments, not even the prayers that usually guided the dead through the afterlife. What shocked experts most was that his internal organs, typically removed, remained in place, as if those who buried him had refused to grant him passage to eternity. The resin sealing his wrappings suggested he had been embalmed without ceremony, bound and silenced in both life and death. Tests on his remains suggested death had not come peacefully. The position of the head, the angle of the neck, and the unusual rigidity of his posture indicated extreme distress at the moment of death. Toxicological analysis hinted at traces of poisoning, though time had erased any certainty. It was the combination of these clues that kept researchers returning, their curiosity battling the faint dread that perhaps this mummy's story was darker than they wished to know. Unlike others entombed in Deir el-Bahari, his burial bore signs of disgrace. He had been found not in an elaborate tomb of his own, but within a royal cache where priests had hidden mummies from tomb robbers centuries after their burials. His wrappings bore no name, no title, only shame. Among the neatly labelled pharaohs and queens, his body lay out of place, anonymous yet striking, as though those who had buried him wanted him close enough to the royals he once knew, but forever excluded from their eternal company. Ancient texts hinted that he may have been denied proper rites. Some fragments described the punishment of those who betrayed their king, their spirits condemned to wander without rest. The mutilation of burial customs was not only a physical disgrace, it was a spiritual curse. Egyptians believed that to deny someone the rituals of the afterlife was to erase them from existence itself. In that light, the man's scream took on a different meaning. Not fear of death, but the horror of a soul trapped between worlds, aware of its eternal loss. Later, findings linked the mummy to a royal scandal, buried in secrecy. In the late 19th century, when his body was studied alongside others from the royal cache, researchers noticed something remarkable. He shared genetic traits with the pharaoh Ramses III. That discovery led to speculation that the two men were bound not just by blood, but by violence. Records from the period tell of the harem conspiracy, an attempted coup led by one of Ramses III's wives and her son Pentuer. Those convicted of the crime were executed or forced to take their own lives, their names stricken from monuments. Through fragments of papyrus, one name began to emerge: Pentuer. If this were truly him, then the mummy's expression might tell the story of betrayal, punishment, and despair. According to ancient accounts, Pentuer, the prince accused of plotting his father's murder, was ordered to die by his own hand. The body before researchers fit that narrative too well to ignore. A young man of noble lineage, buried in shame, denied the rights of kingship. If true, the scream frozen on his face might have been his final protest against a sentence delivered by his own blood. In the stillness of his glass case, the prince's scream seems to wait for the moment someone finally dares to answer it. The Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria. It started with the sound of machinery striking stone. The construction site on Al-Kamili Street in Alexandria had been routine until the excavator's claw met resistance deep underground. When the dust cleared, workers stared down into the trench and saw a surface unlike anything they expected, smooth, cold, and impossibly dark. It was not limestone, not marble, but black granite, heavier, older, and utterly silent beneath the noise of the city above. Workers at a construction site in Alexandria paused, staring at the dark object their tools had uncovered. The heat was thick, the air trembling with the echo of machinery now stilled in anticipation. Officials were called, and within hours, the site was surrounded by archaeologists, security, and curious onlookers. The first measurements confirmed its scale, almost 9 feet long, 5 feet wide, weighing nearly 30 tons. Its presence seemed wrong in the middle of modern Alexandria, as if something ancient had been waiting beneath the concrete for far too long. Buried 5 meters below the surface, the massive sarcophagus was sealed tight, its black granite absorbing every flicker of light. Experts noted that it was one of the largest ever found in Egypt, dating to the Ptolemaic period more than 2,000 years ago. There were no inscriptions, no names carved into its surface and absence that disturbed as much as it intrigued. Every royal tomb, every noble burial bore identity, prayers, or blessings. This one offered nothing. It was as if whoever rested inside had been meant to be forgotten. Archaeologists arrived within hours, their excitement tempered by unease at the sight of something so untouched. They prepared carefully, fearing what gases or decayed remains might be sealed within after millennia. The sarcophagus was so heavy that even with cranes and reinforced equipment, it resisted every attempt to move or open it. Sweat mixed with dust as the work continued under the harsh sun, and though the experts said little, none could shake the sense that this discovery carried a warning of its own. Rumors spread fast, carried by headlines and whispers that spoke of curses, plagues, and restless spirits. The story reached beyond Egypt within days, with news outlets speculating about an Egyptian curse reawakening after centuries of silence. Online discussions fed the hysteria, comparing the find to legends of tombs that punished those who dared disturb them. In Alexandria itself, some locals urged the authorities not to open the sarcophagus at all. It had been sealed for a reason, they said, and breaking that seal might invite the same fate that befell those who ignored ancient taboos. Tests on the seal showed it had remained undisturbed for more than 2,000 years. The material that closed the lid was ancient mortar, hardened like stone. Whatever air existed inside had not circulated since before Cleopatra's time. It was a perfect prison of darkness, and yet the team pressed on. The scientific significance was undeniable. Still, beneath the professional restraint, a question persisted: what could have warranted such secrecy and such a tomb? Inside the site perimeter, the air grew heavy as the team prepared to open the lid. Cameras surrounded the trench, journalists pressed for access, and guards kept the crowd at a distance. It took hours to shift the heavy granite slab even slightly, the gap widening millimeter by millimeter. When the first trace of smell reached the surface, people nearby turned away. It was foul, acrid, ancient, a stench of rot that had waited centuries to escape. When the sarcophagus finally yielded, a wave of foul liquid and decay burst forth. Workers recoiled as dark red-brown water gushed out, filling the air with the reek of death and metal. Inside the thick stone walls, time had liquefied everything. Even the archaeologists, trained to deal with the unthinkable, hesitated before looking closer. The black sarcophagus, now open to daylight for the first time in millennia, seemed almost alive with the force of its release. What lay inside confounded the team. 3 human skeletons submerged in reddish sludge. The bones were tangled together, showing signs of violent injury and irregular burial. There were no amulets, no signs of mummification, nothing sacred to mark a ritual death. They were buried hastily, sealed in filth and darkness, as though discarded rather than entombed. Theories emerged almost instantly: soldiers, plague victims, murderers, but none fit neatly. The placement of the remains, the depth, the absence of inscription, all suggested something darker, something that defied clear explanation. As the analysis continued, the story of the black sarcophagus only grew stranger. Tests revealed that the liquid inside was a mix of sewage and decomposition, a foul accident of time and groundwater. But that explanation failed to quiet the unease. People around the world joked about curses online, yet others warned that disturbing such a resting place was never without consequence. Even today, the black sarcophagus stands in Alexandria's collective memory as an object that defied both reverence and reason, a relic of death that had no name, no peace, and no origin that anyone could claim with certainty. Long after it was sealed again, some still wonder whether what escaped that day was only air and water, or something that was never meant to be freed. The tomb of the Silver Priestess. When archaeologists uncovered the sealed chamber in Dashur, they expected another forgotten noble's resting place. What they found, instead, silenced the room. The tomb, carved deep into limestone and sealed with slabs that had resisted centuries, bore no royal insignia, no markings of a dynasty or a pharaoh. Only a faint engraving shimmered on the outer wall, a crescent framed by a ring of stars, unlike anything in Egyptian symbology. The name of the occupant was missing, erased long ago, as if history itself had conspired to forget whoever lay within. Archaeological whispers hinted at a figure revered not for power, but for prophecy. Inscriptions found in nearby ruins spoke of a woman who communed with unseen forces, guiding the living through messages from the dead. Her name was never written, only her title, the Silver One. Some believed she was a priestess of lunar rites, her body entombed with offerings meant to illuminate her path through eternity. To those who heard her story, the tomb's discovery felt less like an excavation and more like a disturbance of something waiting beneath the surface of belief itself. Cold air spilled from the cracked doorway, carrying the faint metallic scent of silver and decay. As the chamber's darkness met the glow of electric lamps, the reflection of something pale and metallic rippled across the stone floor. Every surface appeared dustless, untouched, as though sealed yesterday. The explorers moved slowly, their voices hushed by the echoing chamber. In the center, half buried in sand, lay an ornate coffin with faint traces of silver leaf still clinging to its sides. The air seemed to thicken around it, heavy and unmoving. Inscribed across the walls were marks no scholar could translate, symbols that gleamed under torchlight like wet ash. They curved and twisted into shapes reminiscent of celestial constellations, yet none matched the stars known to Egyptian astronomers. There were no scenes of gods guiding souls through the afterlife, no hieroglyphic prayers for safe passage. The language was entirely alien to the art and tradition of the region. What stood out most was the recurring image of a figure in a flowing headdress, her arms raised toward a shining orb. She appeared not as a supplicant, but as a figure being worshipped. At the heart of the chamber stood a sarcophagus, unlike any seen before, its surface plated with tarnished silver and blackened jewels. Around its base were fragments of alabaster jars, their stoppers still sealed, and remnants of a fabric that glittered faintly under the light. The style of craftsmanship suggested late Ptolemaic influence, but the materials were far older. No inscriptions named the priestess within. No texts described her role. Yet her tomb, though stripped of its offerings, retained an aura of guarded significance, as though its secrecy was the true treasure. Beyond the polished metal and preserved relics lay something less explainable. The air inside the chamber was unnaturally heavy, as though it had never been touched by time. Researchers noted faint traces of silver dust coating the walls, forming strange geometric patterns that shimmered under lamplight. At the center, a narrow silver rod rested upon the sarcophagus, an artifact with no clear purpose, yet positioned as though to guard what lay within. Each object seemed placed with deliberate precision, a silent code left by those who feared what the tomb contained. Those who catalogued the tomb spoke of sleepless nights and whispers echoing through their recordings. Technicians reported interference in their devices, as if faint voices pressed through static. A film crew documented the opening, but several frames were later found blank, overexposed by a flash of light that no one remembered seeing. Some workers refused to re-enter the site, claiming they had seen movement in the corner of their vision or glimpsed a woman standing silently near the threshold, her outline flickering like smoke. The findings were archived, but never published in full, and the site was quietly sealed again after excavation. Nothing about the tomb explained who the silver priestess had been, yet her presence felt unmistakably near. The discovery hinted at a figure of immense spiritual power, perhaps tied to rites lost before Egypt's recorded history began. Some believed she might have served as an oracle, bridging the mortal and divine, her silver adornments symbolizing lunar devotion. Others suspected she was deliberately erased, a heretic or rival priestess whose influence had threatened those in power. Whatever the truth, the silence around her name endured, unbroken even by the efforts of modern historians. Deep within the sealed tomb, something waits in the dark that was never meant to be found. The curse of the Ice Maiden. Cold winds whip across the Siberian plateau, carrying with them whispers of a forgotten world buried beneath permafrost and silence. In 1993, archaeologists led by Natalia Polosmak unearthed an astonishing discovery in the Altai Mountains, a burial mound containing the frozen remains of a woman unlike any other. Perfectly preserved in ice for over 2,000 years, she became known as the Ice Maiden, or the Siberian Princess. What began as a scientific triumph soon descended into fear, tragedy, and mystery. Encased within a wooden chamber deep underground, her body was adorned with intricate tattoos swirling animal motifs, etched into her pale skin, symbols of power and protection among the Pazyryk people. Her garments, made from fine wool and silk, hinted at a woman of high status, yet it was her expression, serene but haunting, that seemed to stare through the ages. The moment her resting place was disturbed, locals whispered that the spirits of the mountains had been awakened. Shortly after her removal from the burial mound, the sky darkened. A fierce storm swept through the region, delaying the team's journey back. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, and one of the vehicles carrying the coffin broke down midway, forcing the team to continue in silence through the relentless snow. To those who lived nearby, it was no coincidence they believed the mountain itself was rejecting the disturbance of its sacred tomb. Upon her arrival in Novosibirsk, the Ice Maiden was placed under laboratory conditions for examination. Scientists marveled at her preservation, revealing details of her elaborate hairstyle and the mysterious tattoos that covered her shoulders and arms. But with every discovery came another unsettling occurrence. Reports spread of illness among workers, sudden accidents, and strange sounds in the research facility at night, faint footsteps echoing when the corridors were empty. The deeper they studied, the more uneasy the atmosphere became. Legends from the Altai people speak of a guardian spirit, a priestess whose duty was to protect the balance between the living and the dead. Many believed the Ice Maiden was that very figure, laid to rest with 6 sacrificial horses to guide her soul. Disturbing her slumber, elders warned, would unleash misfortune upon those who dared to uncover her secrets. Even Polosmak herself, though dedicated to science, later admitted that her team faced a chain of strange coincidences following the excavation. The villagers of the Altai region soon demanded her return. They claimed their crops had withered, their herds had vanished, and earthquakes had shaken the land. Local shamans held ceremonies, urging the government to re-enter the Ice Maiden and restore peace. Despite the controversy, her body remained in the museum, frozen once more, but now surrounded by glass and human eyes, instead of soil and silence. Years later, when scientists attempted to recreate her facial features using forensic reconstruction, the result only deepened the unease. The face that emerged seemed almost alive, young, solemn, and gazing outward with an expression that some described as sorrowful, others as accusing. The project reignited the debate between science and spirituality, between preservation and desecration. Was knowledge worth the price of disturbing the dead? Historians and researchers continued to analyze her origins, linking her lineage to the ancient Scythian tribes of the steppe. Artifacts found beside her a mirror, vessels, and herbs hinted at ceremonial practices possibly tied to shamanic rituals. Yet despite decades of study, one question remains unanswered. Who was she, and why was she buried apart from others of her kind? Each theory, from royal priestess to spiritual intermediary, adds another layer to her legend. Some claim that the curse surrounding the Ice Maiden is less about supernatural revenge and more about nature's warning that certain truths, when forced from their frozen vaults, carry consequences beyond comprehension. Others see it as humanity's own reflection, a reminder of our fragile line between reverence and intrusion. Now, she lies preserved within a controlled chamber, watched by cameras, guarded by glass, but untouched by time. Visitors who stand before her exhibit often describe a strange sensation, a stillness that seems to pull at the air, a quiet reminder that the boundary between the living and the dead is far thinner than it appears. The Ice Maiden endures within the silence, her frozen stare unbroken, as if anticipating the next intrusion. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang and its deadly secrets. It stands as one of the greatest archaeological enigmas in human history. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, whose empire and afterlife were both built upon absolute control. Buried beneath a hill near Xi'an, the vast underground complex remains almost completely untouched, shrouded in mystery and guarded by warnings written across millennia. What little has been uncovered around it hints at an empire of the dead, crafted with precision and purpose beyond comprehension. When farmers dug a well in 1974, they uncovered fragments of life-sized warriors that changed history. The figures, later revealed to be part of an immense terracotta army, stood in silent ranks as though awaiting orders that would never come. Each face was unique, sculpted with such care that it seemed they could draw breath if called upon. What began as a local discovery quickly became one of the most astonishing finds in modern archaeology, yet it was only the surface of something far larger and far stranger. Rows of warriors stretch across underground corridors, their weapons still sharp, their formations perfect. Horses stand ready in clay stables, and generals with solemn expressions gaze toward an unseen command. The craftsmanship suggests an empire recreated in miniature, a world built for eternity. Yet beyond these outer chambers lies something that no one has yet dared to enter: the central tomb, where the emperor himself is said to rest, sealed since 210 BCE. The closer researchers came to its heart, the stronger the sense grew that what was hidden within was never meant to be disturbed. At the heart of the burial mound, ancient texts describe a chamber that glitters with bronze and gold, a palace beneath the earth. The historian Sima Qian wrote that the tomb was filled with rivers of flowing mercury to simulate the waterways of China, with pearls set into the ceiling to mimic the stars. These accounts were once dismissed as myth until modern surveys confirmed unnaturally high levels of mercury in the soil above the tomb. The revelation revived centuries-old fears that the emperor's architects had crafted a world that could poison those who entered it. Within those sealed walls, the environment has remained untouched for more than 2,000 years. Scientists warn that even the smallest disturbance could collapse the delicate structures or release toxins sealed in the chamber's air. Unlike most tombs that yield their secrets to careful excavation, this one resists intrusion by the sheer danger it presents. Chinese authorities have chosen to preserve it as it stands, protecting both its treasures and whatever hazards it might conceal. Under the weight of centuries, the tomb has become more than a burial site. It is a paradox of curiosity and restraint. Every effort to explore it further brings new ethical questions. Should humanity uncover what was never meant to be seen, or should the tomb remain undisturbed, its mystery intact, guarding the balance between reverence and ruin? The silence surrounding it has become part of its legend, a silence more commanding than any imperial decree. Long hidden beneath layers of clay and history, the emperor's resting place is said to contain not only his remains, but the embodiment of his empire's ideology. It was built to last forever, to reflect a ruler who sought to control life, death, and even the heavens. The army of clay that surrounds him stands as a physical manifestation of his will, ensuring his dominance over the mortal world and the one beyond. It is both magnificent and unsettling, a symbol of devotion that borders on the eternal. Technological scans beneath the surface have uncovered sprawling tunnel systems and chambers branching in every direction, many yet to be explored. The complexity of the structure defies modern understanding, suggesting an extraordinary level of planning and secrecy. Some believe that traps described in ancient writings, crossbows triggered by motion, hidden chambers, and toxic fumes may still lie intact, waiting in silence. The sheer scope of the site hints at a civilization that reached the edge of its power and sealed its secrets beneath the ground. Scholars continue to debate whether the tomb should ever be opened. Some argue that the knowledge it holds could redefine understanding of China's early empire, while others fear that tampering with it would destroy what time alone has preserved. Every discovery around it only deepens the enigma, suggesting a design not only for eternity, but against intrusion. The emperor's wish for immortality may have been denied in life, but in death, his silence endures stronger than any reign. Far below the quiet fields of Xi'an, the first emperor still waits, surrounded by his clay legions, watching over a kingdom that time itself has not dared to claim. The bog bodies that whisper. Mist clung to the marshland where the first body was found. The air was still, heavy with the scent of damp earth, and the peat beneath the surface looked undisturbed for centuries. When workers in Denmark uncovered the figure in 1950, they expected bones, but what emerged was a man so perfectly preserved that his eyelashes were still intact. His name would become known to the world as the Tolland Man, and his quiet expression would haunt generations of archaeologists who stared into his peaceful, lifelike face. Beyond that first haunting discovery, others soon followed in nearby bogs, bodies drawn from the earth as if summoned by memory itself. Some were found face down, others curled in fetal positions, each preserved in startling detail. Their discovery suggested a pattern, an ancient ritual repeated across generations. What unsettled experts most was the consistency. No graves, no markers, only the silent embrace of the peat, holding its secrets tighter than stone. When investigators brushed away the peat, they found skin untouched by time. The bog's unique chemistry, its cold, oxygen-poor, acidic waters, had performed a strange kind of miracle, turning human flesh into leather and halting decay. But while science could explain how these bodies survived, it could not explain why so many were buried in these remote wetlands. The Tolland man still wore a noose around his neck, suggesting ritual or execution, yet his serene expression told another story, one that refused to be clearly defined. No one expected the bog to hold a face so human, so recent. Each discovery mirrored the same eerie perfection. The Grobal man, with his throat cut cleanly, the Yid girl from the Netherlands, with her hair tied in a careful knot, the Lindo man from England, whose final moments showed both violence and strange reverence. These bodies seemed trapped between worlds, as if sacrificed not to men, but to something older, something that demanded both life and secrecy. The scientists called them miracles of chemistry. Locals called them something else. In Denmark, elders whispered that the bogs were gates to the underworld, places where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred. Offerings of grain, weapons, and jewelry had been found alongside the bodies, hinting that the dead were not discarded, but offered. To those who still live near these peatlands, the bogs are not just land, they are memory itself, heavy with the voices of those who never left. Each excavation brought whispers, not from the wind, but from those watching. Archaeologists often spoke of the unsettling silence that seemed to settle once the bog was disturbed, as though it disapproved of the intrusion. In more than one case, the excavation sites were abandoned temporarily due to strange malfunctions, equipment failing, lights flickering, and recordings distorted. To the scientific teams, these were mere coincidences, but among the locals, it was said that the bog remembers its dead. Across northern Europe, other bodies surfaced, all wearing the same silent expression. From Ireland to Germany, they emerged one by one, their faces marked by ritual, their bodies positioned with care. Some were thought to be criminals executed for their crimes, others, sacred offerings to the gods of fertility or harvest. But no record survives to tell who they were or what they believed. The mystery is not only in how they died, but in the shared, unspoken message. Their preservation carries a message nature itself seems to protect. Even the tools used to uncover them began to corrode faster than expected. The bog's acids spared the flesh of the dead, yet consumed the metal of the living, as though rejecting modern intrusion. Each layer of peat peeled back another century, and beneath every inch lay fragments of woven cloth, leather, and bone clues, preserved with unnatural precision. Yet, with every body unearthed, new questions surfaced. Were these victims or chosen ones? Was the bog their punishment or their salvation? Between the realms of science and legend, a realization began to form. The bogs appeared to mirror the geography of old trade routes and ritual sites. Chemical traces in the hair and nails of the preserved revealed diets, far from local, suggesting these individuals had traveled great distances before their deaths. Whether pilgrims, outcasts, or sacrifices, they seemed drawn to the same kind of ground, the kind that remembers what the world forgets. The Tolland man still lies in his glass case in Silkeborg Museum, eyes closed, as if he could open them at any moment, a whisper from the earth, waiting for its next voice to be heard. The lost tomb of Cleopatra. To uncover the resting place of Egypt's last queen, archaeologists have searched for centuries. From the deserts of Giza to the marshlands of the Nile Delta, countless expeditions have followed the faintest whispers of her name. Yet despite her fame and power, Cleopatra VII, the woman who defied empires and shaped the fate of Rome itself, lies lost beneath the sands, her tomb still hidden from the world she once ruled. Ancient writers left clues long before modern expeditions began, their hunt clues that seemed both clear and intentionally misleading. Plutarch described her burial beside Mark Antony, her fallen lover, within a royal mausoleum she had ordered built before she died in 30 BCE. But neither temple nor tomb has ever been found, and the geography of Alexandria, swallowed by earthquakes and the sea, has blurred the truth. What was once the shining capital of the Ptolemies has become a fragmented ghost, half buried, half drowned. What remains certain is that Cleopatra's death marked more than the end of a dynasty. It was the closing of Egypt's ancient sovereignty. Her final wish, to rest beside Antony, symbolized her refusal to surrender her identity to Rome. Yet the silence that followed her burial was unnatural. No monument, no inscription, no temple relief ever revealed her final resting place. It is as though her tomb was hidden by design, protected from both conquerors and time itself. Under the shifting sands of Egypt, however, pieces of the mystery have begun to surface. Coins bearing her likeness, fragments of Greek inscriptions, and shards of temple walls near Tapestry Magna suggest that her story did not end in Alexandria. Deep beneath the ruins of this temple complex west of the city, archaeologists have unearthed hidden passageways leading to sealed chambers, corridors lined with offerings, and a series of tunnels that appear to stretch toward the sea. Every excavation near Tapestry Magna seems to bring the world closer to her shadow. Led by archaeologist Kathleen Martinez, teams have uncovered mummies adorned with gold, a headless statue believed to depict a queen, and evidence of a ritual sanctuary that honoured both Egyptian and Greek gods. The discovery of coins engraved with Cleopatra's image inside the temple walls has fueled the theory that she may have chosen this sacred site as her final refuge, far from the political ruins of Alexandria and close to the gods she once invoked. Deep in the tunnels, local workers whisper of strange sensations, air that turns cold, faint murmurs echoing where no one stands, and instruments that falter as if the earth itself resists intrusion. Whether superstition or something stranger, such accounts echo the atmosphere that has surrounded Cleopatra's legacy for centuries, beauty intertwined with danger and reverence shadowed by loss. Artifacts pulled from the site have revealed details that complicate the legend further. Amulets dedicated to Isis, the goddess with whom Cleopatra was often identified, were discovered beside fragments of funerary masks coated in gold leaf. A series of buried chambers beneath the main temple contain skeletons facing west, the direction of the afterlife, as though forming a silent procession toward a queen they were meant to guard. If the tunnels do conceal her tomb, they may also hold the secrets of a royal cult devoted to her divinity. Even the most advanced scans and imaging technologies have struggled to penetrate the dense rock and unstable ground beneath the temple. Attempts to map the deeper sections often result in interference or unclear readings, as though the site conceals layers of history too tangled to separate. Despite decades of effort, the last chamber, the one believed to hold Cleopatra's body, remains sealed, its entrance hidden beneath collapsed stone and centuries of sediment. Some historians believe that her tomb lies underwater, somewhere within the submerged ruins of ancient Alexandria. Earthquakes and tsunamis that struck the coast over millennia could have dragged the royal mausoleum beneath the Mediterranean, entombing her beneath coral and silt. Others argue that she ensured her disappearance, knowing that her death would mark the end of Egypt's independence, and that her tomb must remain hidden forever to preserve her myth. Hidden in the depths where the Nile's whispers fade, she rests, her silence stretching across ages of shifting ground. The crate from the Cairo Museum. The crate arrived quietly in the early hours of a humid Cairo morning, its wooden panels scarred by travel and age. The porters who handled it remarked on its unusual weight, heavier than any crate of similar size, yet oddly hollow-sounding when tapped. No shipment records listed the contents beyond a vague label. Ancient artifacts handle with care. Even seasoned museum staff sensed an unusual tension in the air as the crate was wheeled across the polished floors of the storage hall. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and resin, a scent that seemed to linger unnaturally long, as though the crate had trapped centuries within it. Conservators moved cautiously, gloves snapping into place, while their eyes darted nervously to the crude carvings etched along the crate's edges. They resembled hieroglyphs at first glance, yet none could identify the sequence, the symbols twisting and looping in a way that felt almost intentional, almost aware. The first person to touch the crate, a young cataloguer named Sammy, reported a sudden chill crawling up his arms, as if the wood itself resisted contact. He shivered, despite the warm room, and stepped back, insisting it felt alive under his fingertips. Colleagues dismissed his unease as imagination, a trick of stress from long hours and dim lighting. Yet the moment lingered in the room, a subtle heaviness that refused explanation, making even the most rational curator glance over his shoulder more than once. Curiosity drove the team to open the crate, a decision tempered by both excitement and foreboding. The lid resisted at first, as though locked by a mechanism unseen, then gave way with a reluctant groan that echoed through the hall. Inside, layers of faded linen-wrapped objects that seemed to hum faintly, an imperceptible vibration that tugged at the senses rather than the ears. Each item bore the unmistakable touch of ancient hands, yet no records indicated their origin, their provenance lost somewhere in the annals of early 20th century acquisitions. Whispers quickly spread among the staff of subtle, unnerving occurrences. Conservators claimed tools vanished from tables only to reappear hours later, perfectly placed but in ways that seemed deliberate. The lights flickered unpredictably above the crate, and security footage captured fleeting shadows that appeared to move independently, always just beyond direct view. Those who stayed too long in its vicinity reported a pressure in their chests, an anxiety that crept along their nerves without provocation. Among the artifacts was a small statuette carved from blackened alabaster, its surface slick and smooth like polished obsidian. Researchers noted an unsettling symmetry in its features, eyes angled with a precision that seemed designed to follow, not merely gaze. Attempts to photograph the statuette revealed strange distortions in the images, faces blurred, backgrounds warped, and in some prints, fleeting shapes that did not exist in the room at the time. It was as if the object subtly resisted documentation, preserving a mystery that defied science and reason. As days passed, incidents escalated. Sammy collapsed without warning, struck by a fever that resisted diagnosis. Another curator experienced a fall that left her bruised yet unharmed in ways that confounded medical explanation. Rumors circulated of whispered voices behind closed doors, soft words that faded before any response could be given. The crate, once simply an object of historical interest, had become a presence, an entity whose influence seeped into the routines and minds of those around it. Attempts to quarantine the crate only seemed to intensify its effects. When moved to a sealed storage room, the temperature inside fluctuated violently, rising to suffocating heat before plummeting into bone-chilling cold within minutes. Guards stationed nearby complained of headaches and nausea, describing an oppressive sensation that seemed to pulse in sync with the crate itself. Documentation of these incidents was sparse, yet each report hinted at something deliberately evasive, as though the crate selectively revealed its power while keeping the full truth hidden. Even museum directors grew wary, speaking in hushed tones about the consequences of curiosity and the weight of history that sometimes refused to rest. Specialists from abroad who came to examine the crate expressed discomfort and impatience, leaving hastily with no clear explanation. Yet every departure, every avoidance, only magnified the crate's notoriety, turning it into a legend whispered among the staff, a story of fascination and fear intertwined. For reasons unknown, no one could explain what had drawn such misfortune to a single shipment. Some suggested curses, others imagined the crate had absorbed the misdeeds of its previous owners. Records from the Cairo Museum hinted at decades of disappearance, illness, and strange accidents among those who had encountered its contents. The truth, however, remained elusive, wrapped in the linen and carvings that seemed to watch every hand daring enough to disturb them. Even today, the crate rests quietly behind reinforced glass, untouched except for the briefest examinations, yet its aura lingers in the corridors and offices that surround it. Some nights, staff swear they hear faint scraping or tapping from within, the soft rhythm of something moving against the wooden walls. The contents remain a mystery, and no one knows what would await if it were ever opened again. The cursed papyrus of Abalessa, Records indicate the papyrus of Abalessa first appeared in private collections during the mid-19th century, brought from the Saharan region of southern Algeria to European scholars. Its provenance was partly documented, yet many gaps remained, hinting at years when it passed silently through hands unknown. Early mentions in auction records described it as a fragment of an ancient funerary text, yet no one could decipher its full significance at the time. Ancient inscriptions on the papyrus carried words that scholars struggled to translate, cryptic phrases that suggested forbidden knowledge and solemn warnings. The writing itself seemed alive on the fragile parchment, curling at the edges as if recoiling from scrutiny. Some hieratic symbols appeared deliberately obscured, layered in ways that challenged even the most experienced Egyptologists, raising questions about whether the papyrus was meant to be read at all. Observers noted that those attempting to decode the final line often exhibited sudden changes in behavior. A linguist in London became obsessed with reproducing the scroll's characters, neglecting meals and sleep, until colleagues found him disoriented and feverish. Similar patterns appeared in archives from Paris, Cairo, and Florence, where brief accounts described translators who either vanished or succumbed to unexplained mental collapse. Each record hinted at a recurring danger, yet none fully explained the mechanism behind it. Documents show the papyrus was exchanged between private collectors and museum curators with increasing caution. Every transfer seemed to carry misfortune in its wake, from unexplained illnesses to accidents that defied rational explanation. Despite its small size, the papyrus drew attention not only for its content, but for the aura of dread that accompanied its presence, an unease that transcended reason and unsettled even seasoned custodians. One account describes a Parisian scholar in 1873 who spent weeks attempting to trace the lineage of the text. Reports claim he grew pale and withdrawn, muttering phrases no one recognized, before disappearing from his lodging entirely. Colleagues who attempted to retrieve his notes found the papyrus untouched, as though it had resisted being separated from the scholar's failing consciousness, leaving only fragments of documentation to hint at the ordeal that had occurred. Historical annotations in marginal notes suggest the papyrus may have been linked to rituals invoking unseen forces, though interpretations remain speculative. Some suggest the warnings were meant to protect the uninitiated, while others believe the text carried an inherent danger, activated only when someone sought to comprehend it fully. These debates persist, fueled by the subtle but undeniable evidence of misfortune that trailed those who examined the scroll. Letters preserved in archives across Europe and North Africa detail recurring patterns of illness, obsession, and sudden death among individuals who engaged with the papyrus. Physicians of the time struggled to explain the ailments, which included extreme fatigue, hallucinations, and, in several cases, inexplicable fevers that claimed lives within days. Historians later noted that the intensity of these effects seemed linked to proximity and time spent attempting translation, rather than the papyrus itself being handled directly. Curators eventually secured the papyrus under tightly controlled conditions in major institutions, attempting to isolate it from scholars or enthusiasts who might be drawn to its mysteries. Even so, reports persisted of disturbances within the storage rooms, books fallen from shelves, drafts in sealed corridors, and faint whispers echoing through empty galleries. These phenomena were never captured definitively, yet they reinforced the idea that the artifact possessed a presence that extended beyond physical containment. The papyrus itself appeared unremarkable to casual observation, a simple sheet of ancient linen etched with fading ink. Yet its aura defied appearances, as if the very act of studying it allowed glimpses into knowledge that mortals were not meant to hold. Modern examinations confirmed its authenticity, though they also revealed no clues as to the cause of the misfortune tied to its discovery. It remained a text whose power was measured not in content alone, but in the consequences borne by those who dared to read it. Shrouded in ambiguity, the warnings on the scroll could be literal curses or cryptic allegories, leaving scholars and historians divided and uneasy. The papyrus endures in its repository, shielded by glass and careful oversight, yet its influence lingers in the faint anxiety recorded among those tasked with its study. Shadows of its past seemed to follow the edges of research notes, whispered in the margins, where curiosity almost always met peril. To unlock its secret, the final line waits undeciphered, daring a reader who may or may not survive. The tomb beneath Lake Issyk-Kul. Lake Issyk-Kul, one of the largest alpine lakes in Kyrgyzstan, conceals beneath its placid surface secrets that have remained hidden for centuries. The lake, known for its unusual salinity and glacial origins, stretches over 600 square kilometers, with depths reaching nearly 700 meters. Among these depths, a series of anomalies suggested the presence of submerged structures, sparking interest among both historians and modern divers. Divers reported sudden currents and disorienting visibility that defied expectations, even in areas where the water should have been calm. Experienced underwater teams described a sense of constriction, as if the lake itself resisted their passage, and some recounted instruments behaving erratically, measuring pressures that contradicted known topography. These anomalies seemed concentrated near a small, isolated section of the western shore. Local legends spoke of ancient tombs hidden beneath the waters, burial sites of unknown rulers whose spirits were said to guard their resting places. Villagers told stories passed down for generations, warning that the lake would claim anyone who disturbed what lay below. Scholars later confirmed that the region had been home to nomadic tribes for millennia, making it plausible that funerary practices might include submerged crypts, though physical evidence remained scarce. Maps of the lake produced by Soviet surveyors in the 20th century revealed inconsistencies in the bathymetry, suggesting depressions and patterns too regular to be purely natural. Some of these formations aligned in geometric shapes, hinting at artificial construction, though definitive identification was impossible without direct exploration. Modern sonar scans reinforced these observations, revealing vertical structures that rose from the lakebed like silent monoliths. Closer sonar analysis revealed subtle grooves on several submerged stones, patterns that resembled carved symbols rather than natural fissures. These markings hinted at a deliberate arrangement, suggesting the presence of a tomb complex that had been deliberately concealed beneath the lake for unknown reasons. Equipment logs recorded abrupt malfunctions when divers approached these sections, including unexpected loss of lights, camera distortions, and fluctuations in oxygen readings. Teams reported a creeping unease during dives, often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature or dense, murky sediment that clouded visibility for no discernible reason. The patterns repeated across multiple expeditions, baffling engineers and diving specialists alike. Historians note that Issyk-Kul was a crossroads for Silk Road travelers, meaning that the presence of hidden tombs or ritual sites is historically plausible. Archaeological records show scattered finds of pottery, tools, and burial markers along the shoreline, yet nothing remotely as elaborate or as deep as what modern sonar hinted at beneath the water. These clues painted a picture of a region where human activity and natural formations merged, creating a labyrinthine environment that defied easy mapping. Eyewitness accounts from rescue teams described divers returning with confusion, sudden illness, or hallucinations of unfamiliar architecture. One team reported seeing arches and corridors beneath the water that appeared impossible, structures aligned with precision but submerged in complete darkness. Attempts to document these anomalies often resulted in missing footage or corrupted files, as if the lake resisted being captured by technology. Photographic surveys revealed peculiar sediment patterns, symmetrical and angular, unlike anything formed naturally by currents or silt accumulation. Some experts suggested these patterns could be ancient tomb walls, partially buried and preserved beneath layers of mud. Others speculated that geological shifts might have hidden them over centuries, leaving only glimpses detectable through sonar or brief dives. Investigations continued despite warnings and previous tragedies, motivated by ambition and curiosity. Divers were drawn to the site, scientists to its anomalies, and media to the story of a sunken tomb untouched for hundreds of years. Yet each expedition faced a mounting toll: disorientation, sudden panic, unexplained injuries, and in some cases, death. The lake seemed to exact a silent price for human intrusion, protecting its secrets with a stubborn and invisible force. No explanation exists for the string of drownings linked to these dives, leaving speculation about the tomb's influence or some unknown property of the water itself entirely unresolved. Every report that surfaced hinted at a presence both ancient and formidable, a grave sealed not by stone, but by circumstance, waiting silently beneath the icy waves. The waters above the tomb remain undisturbed, faint outlines of submerged structures visible only to the most daring explorers, as though the lake itself recalls those who ventured below. The death mask of the unknown pharaoh, crafted from gold and inlaid with deep blue lapis lazuli, the mask exudes an aura of meticulous craftsmanship. Its surface reflects light in a way that seems almost unnatural, highlighting facial features carved with extraordinary precision. Scholars note the symmetry is perfect, yet the face remains unsettlingly expressionless, as if it watches anyone who approaches. The Cairo Museum's records document the mask's acquisition in 1922, soon after Tutankhamun's tomb was uncovered, yet the identity of its original wearer is still unknown. Documentation shows it was transferred from a private collection, but no notes clarify how or why it ended up in a museum setting. Curators have long remarked on its prominence, placed in a climate-controlled display, yet even behind glass, it commands attention far beyond ordinary artifacts. Conservators observed that even brief contact produced unusual effects on staff. A temperature drop was often the first symptom, followed by disorientation and, in some cases, fainting. Safety protocols were revised multiple times, yet none could fully prevent these incidents, which appeared sporadic and unpredictable, frustrating museum professionals and scientists alike. Chemical analysis revealed traces of a rare resin applied to the inner surface of the mask, previously undocumented in known funerary practices. This substance emitted a faint, almost imperceptible odor when exposed to air, which some believe could trigger mild hallucinations or dizziness. Scholars remain divided on whether the resin was meant for preservation or for a more sinister purpose, further deepening the mask's aura of danger. Historical notes suggest that masks of this type were reserved for royalty, used to preserve the pharaoh's visage for eternity. Yet this mask bears no hieroglyphs, no cartouche, and no identifying features beyond its refined design. Its anonymity adds to the enigma, an artifact seemingly royal, yet without a name or story that could anchor it in history. Reports emerged over decades of visitors lingering too long near the display, later suffering sudden illness, extreme fatigue, or persistent nightmares. Some accounts describe a creeping dread upon entering the gallery, a sensation difficult to describe, yet impossible to ignore. Multiple independent observations suggest that proximity alone, even without physical contact, may trigger subtle but alarming effects. Photography of the mask produced anomalies that puzzled staff for years. Reflections in images occasionally appeared to shift, as if the eyes of the mask followed the camera lens. Shadows cast by its features sometimes moved independently of the known light sources, confounding even experienced photographers. Each attempt to document it further reinforced the sense that the mask resisted full comprehension. Metal analysis confirmed the authenticity of the mask as a period piece from ancient Egypt, with gold and lapis components consistent with known funerary practices of the New Kingdom. Yet, scientific investigation could not account for its unusual influence or the string of incidents linked to it. No chemical contamination, electrical interference, or physical defect provided a reasonable explanation for the reports associated with the artifact. Archives show that curators tried repeatedly to limit exposure, restricting viewing times and forbidding close inspection. Despite this, fascination with the mask persisted, drawing scholars, tourists, and even collectors eager to glimpse the enigmatic face. Attempts to study it in controlled conditions often led to staff being reassigned after inexplicable health complaints or sudden departures from the museum. Security footage captured fleeting shadows at the edge of the mask's display that appeared to move independently, even in an empty gallery. Staff reviewing the recordings noted subtle shifts in lighting and reflections that could not be explained by environmental factors or camera error. These unexplained phenomena reinforced the perception that the mask's influence extended beyond physical contact, unsettling anyone who spent prolonged time nearby. Eyewitnesses recount moments when the mask appeared to shift subtly under observation. Expressions seemed to alter when unobserved, shadows deepened around the cheekbones, and the eyes occasionally glimmered in a way that defied ordinary light physics. These observations were noted in reports, yet no one could verify the phenomena under standard scientific conditions, leaving the artifact's true nature frustratingly elusive. To explain the mysterious effects, no account fully clarifies the fainting spells, disorientation, or accidents associated with the mask, keeping historians and curators at odds. Some attribute its effects to psychological suggestion, while others believe a more inexplicable force is at work, one that continues to challenge both logic and observation. The mask remains securely displayed, yet those who study it cannot shake the sense that it holds secrets that may never be revealed. The gold face continues to watch silently, lingering in the gallery long after visitors depart, as though the mask recalls anyone bold enough to approach. The blighted pyramid of Teotihuacan. Ominously, the pyramid's shadows stretched across the excavation site beneath the midday sun, heavy and unnerving to even the most seasoned archaeologists. The stones themselves appeared weathered, yet certain sections glimmered with an unusual sheen, suggesting mineral deposits or perhaps a residue left long ago by unknown hands. Observers noted that these subtle irregularities coincided with areas where past accidents had occurred, though no scientific explanation has ever clarified why. Unexpected tremors shook the lower chambers, rattling scaffolding and sending fine dust into the air. Teams reported the sensation of standing on unstable ground, even where surveys indicated firm rock. Attempts to reinforce these areas often failed, as if the pyramid resisted human intervention, with some supports collapsing overnight despite careful construction. Whispers among the crew spoke of objects moving without explanation during night excavations. Tools vanished only to reappear in distant corridors, and small artifacts shifted position when left unattended. These phenomena, though seemingly minor, heightened the sense that the pyramid itself was alive with unseen forces, observing and interacting with those who dared to enter. Each excavation season brought a new tragedy, from sudden collapses to mysterious illnesses. In 1962, a labourer succumbed to an unexplained fever while mapping an upper chamber. In later years, team members suffered fainting spells, minor fractures, and disorientation, often in patterns that defied ordinary logic. Local authorities began recording these incidents meticulously, hoping to detect natural causes, yet no clear pattern emerged. Stone surfaces glistened in damp areas, though rain had not touched the site, leaving researchers puzzled. Some of these wet patches seemed to emit a faint, metallic scent. Attempts to chemically analyze the moisture yielded no known compound, and even instruments sensitive to humidity fluctuations failed to provide consistent readings. Footsteps echoed where no human was present, prompting workers to halt progress until daylight. The sound was reported as firm and deliberate, often descending into corridors that were otherwise unoccupied. Several accounts described the echoes as lingering longer than physics would allow, amplifying anxiety among even the most skeptical archaeologists. Measurements revealed inconsistencies in the pyramid's internal angles, as if someone had altered the construction to mislead intruders. Certain chambers appeared slightly offset, forming subtle optical illusions that made corridors seem longer or shorter than they actually were. Experts confirmed that no other structures in Teotihuacan displayed these deviations, suggesting either unknown construction methods or deliberate obfuscation by the original builders. Artifacts surfaced with inexplicable marks or corrosion, undetectable during initial handling. Pottery shards appeared scratched as if clawed by some force, while stone figurines displayed fine fissures that formed overnight. Even objects safely stored in modern containers later arrived damaged, baffling conservators and adding to the growing sense of a persistent, inexplicable influence within the pyramid. Never fully completed was the pyramid, its final chambers sealed deliberately to contain a hidden danger, according to local legends. Stories passed down by residents of San Juan Teotihuacan describe priests performing secretive rites before leaving the site, warning future generations against disturbing the inner sanctum. These oral histories, corroborated by scattered hieroglyphic records, suggest that the pyramid's lower passages may have been designed as a protective trap rather than simply a tomb or ceremonial space. No rational theory explained the sequence of accidents and misfortunes, leaving modern archaeologists to debate whether natural hazards or some unseen presence haunted the site. Some speculate that the pyramid's construction incorporated unknown engineering methods that interact unpredictably with human activity. Others suggest that ancient rituals imbued the structure with lingering energies. Despite all precautions, teams continued to experience phenomena that defied explanation, ensuring that the pyramid retained an aura of foreboding mystery. Explorers continue to speak of corridors where silence hangs heavy and shadows outlast the light, as though the pyramid resents being disturbed. The mummy that moved in photographs. Shadows in the corners of the studio seemed to lengthen when the mummy was photographed, slipping across walls in ways that no natural light could explain. Observers remarked on the eerie sensation that the object's presence extended beyond its physical boundaries, as if some unseen energy lingered near the camera lenses. Even seasoned photographers felt an unshakable tension, noticing how light reflected unevenly along the linen wrappings with every adjustment of the tripod. A slight tilt in the printed images suggested the posture had subtly changed since the previous session. Photographs taken a week apart captured the mummy with arms and shoulders shifted in ways that defied careful documentation. Experts attempted to attribute the discrepancies to camera angles or development errors, yet every controlled setup produced the same inexplicable variations, heightening concern among staff. Faint marks appeared on negatives, resembling scratches or etchings that were not present during development. Laboratory technicians cataloguing the films recorded that these anomalies were impermanent. They sometimes vanished when stored in complete darkness and reappeared upon exposure to ambient light. This intermittent behavior baffled even the most meticulous archivists and led to debates about whether the images themselves had become a medium for the mummy's mysterious influence. Each exposure seemed to trigger a minor mishap among staff, from tripping over cables to sudden nausea or disorientation. One assistant reported a blurred vision while examining a freshly developed photograph, describing the mummy's eyes as momentarily luminous, though no photographic technique could create such an effect. Over time, these incidents formed a pattern, suggesting a connection between the act of photographing and the subtle, yet measurable, disturbances in the environment. Temperature readings in the storage room rose inexplicably, while cameras were set up near the mummy. Thermometers often recorded fluctuations of several degrees within minutes, even when ventilation systems functioned normally. Conservators speculated that the linen fibers might interact with electrical equipment, yet no consistent scientific explanation accounted for the rapid, localized warmth observed during multiple sessions. Light reflections on the mummy's wrappings appeared inconsistent, bending unnaturally across successive prints. In some cases, shadows seemed to follow the angles of the figure differently than reality permitted, producing a sense of movement that could not be explained by shifting light sources. Researchers photographing the artifact in identical positions were astonished to see variations, as if the mummy had subtly altered its orientation between exposures. Every attempt to digitize older photographs revealed distortions that suggested movement not captured in the original shot. Scans overlaid with the original prints highlighted areas that had subtly shifted over decades, forming ghost-like silhouettes or faint outlines of limbs in positions never present at the time of capture. Analysts noted that even high-resolution digital imaging failed to stabilize these anomalies, implying that the effect transcended the mechanical limitations of cameras and scanners. Unexpected vibrations occasionally ran through the gallery floor when staff carried newly developed prints to storage, as if the act of moving the photographs awakened a latent energy tied to the mummy. Sensitive instruments recorded minor tremors, but no mechanical cause could be identified. Archivists noticed that these vibrations were more pronounced when multiple images showing the subtle movements of the mummy were handled together, suggesting a connection between the physical prints and the mysterious life captured within them. Ancient linen fibers occasionally showed microscopic tears in places that should have remained intact. These alterations were first noticed under magnification during routine conservation work and corresponded with areas repeatedly photographed. The small, precise rips did not weaken the overall structure, yet their timing and location suggested an external force acting specifically in relation to observation and documentation. Curators noticed a recurring sense of unease among visitors after viewing the photographs on display. Patrons often described feelings of vertigo or a subtle pull towards certain corners of the gallery, particularly when multiple images were exhibited together. While some dismissed these reactions as psychological responses to the mummy's reputation, the consistent reports across decades suggested that the visual recordings themselves carried a mysterious influence. No technological method has successfully explained why each photograph diverges slightly from reality, leaving the mystery unresolved. Analysts, archivists, and historians continue to study the collection, noting every anomaly with painstaking care, yet the mummy's shifting presence in photographs persists, defying logic and raising questions that no human observation has yet answered. Charged with anticipation seems the air even today when a camera clicks near the wrappings, as though the mummy is aware of being photographed. The tomb of the eight-limbed king. Carvings on the walls hinted at an unfamiliar symbolic language, intricate and precise, unlike anything documented in known regional scripts. Archaeologists struggled to interpret the patterns, noticing that each symbol seemed connected to the next in a chain that suggested instructions or a ritual sequence. The depth of the engravings implied deliberate effort over years, perhaps decades, and even the tools used left faint, deliberate grooves in the stone that hinted at a ceremonial purpose. Angles converged in ways that defied conventional architectural logic, forming corridors that looped back on themselves and chambers that seemed to mirror each other perfectly. Surveyors attempting to measure the tomb reported that straight lines bent subtly in their perception, creating optical illusions that disoriented anyone walking through the halls. This uncanny precision suggested an understanding of geometry far beyond the known capabilities of the period in which the tomb was likely constructed. Ritual implements lay scattered across the floors, their arrangement seemingly deliberate, marking each step of a ceremony no longer understood. Bowls, figurines, and carved staffs were placed in symmetrical patterns that aligned with the carvings on the walls, as if the entire chamber had been designed for one continuous sacred act. Excavators reported a strange feeling of synchronization while cataloguing the artifacts, as though the room itself insisted on perfect order. Echoes bounced in unexpected patterns, making footsteps sound multiplied or delayed, disorienting anyone moving through the chambers. Even when only a single voice spoke, the sound seemed to emanate from multiple directions, producing a sensation of being surrounded. Audio analysis revealed no anomalies in the rock itself, indicating that the effect was either deliberately engineered or a subtle manipulation of perception tied to the tomb's geometry. Stone pillars appeared to stretch unnaturally, giving the impression of being watched from every corner. Visitors noted that their sense of scale shifted depending on their location, making narrow corridors feel vast and open spaces seem oppressive. Scholars theorized that the architects had used a combination of proportion, light, and shadow to evoke a psychological impact, one that could unnerve intruders and reinforce the sacred or dangerous nature of the tomb. Chambers aligned according to astronomical points, though some orientations contradicted the known positions of stars from historical records. Observers discovered that while several passages matched lunar or solar positions, others seemed intentionally off, creating a network of celestial discrepancies. These inconsistencies suggested a knowledge of both astronomy and ritual timing, potentially intended to mark specific moments in the year for ceremonies or to protect the tomb from unwanted entry. Traces of paint revealed geometric markings that could only be seen under angled light, hinting at a complex code woven into the tomb's design. Conservators documented the faded pigments and noted that their placement corresponded with intersections of corridors and chambers, implying that light itself was a tool in the tomb's function. The markings formed a pattern that resembled an 8-pointed configuration repeated throughout the structure, lending the site its ominous name. Entrances sealed by massive stones left tiny gaps that seemed to resist measurement, frustrating even expert surveyors. Attempts to record the exact width and depth of these spaces revealed minute variations that defied physical explanation. Some gaps were wider when approached from one angle and narrower from another, as though the tomb actively manipulated perception to conceal its secrets from the living. Patterns of death among the tomb's early explorers occurred with unsettling regularity, almost like the tomb itself enforced a ritual upon intruders. Historical accounts describe synchronized accidents, workers collapsing simultaneously, ladders tipping in perfect coordination, and one archaeologist discovered with his limbs arranged in an impossible alignment. Scholars noted that no ordinary hazard could account for such precise timing, suggesting a supernatural or highly calculated influence within the tomb. No instrument could fully map the interior without distortion, as if the tomb's design actively manipulated perception. Laser scans and modern surveying equipment produced incomplete or contradictory results, leaving experts with fragmented maps and lingering questions. Every attempt to chart the tomb revealed new angles, hidden chambers, and architectural impossibilities that seemed to mock conventional understanding of construction and space. Even as careful study continues, the tomb's 8-limbed symmetry and deadly precision remain beyond full comprehension, and those who seek to uncover all its secrets do so at the risk of joining the silent pattern of those who entered before. The curse of the amber sarcophagus. Glowing faintly, the amber coffin drew immediate attention from researchers studying the crypt, its translucent surface seeming almost alive under the dim lights. The warmth emanating from the polished exterior was subtle yet persistent, causing an inexplicable unease among those who approached. Photographs captured the coffin's hue as deep gold one moment and nearly reddish amber the next, creating an unsettling perception of movement within the material itself. Temperature spikes were recorded near the sarcophagus, defying all conventional thermodynamic explanations. Instruments registered increases of several degrees in areas just inches from the surface, yet sensors placed a few meters away remained unaffected. Specialists in environmental monitoring noted that the heat patterns did not follow predictable physical laws, suggesting either an unknown reaction within the amber or a phenomenon that bordered on the inexplicable. A faint hum seemed to emanate from the amber itself, audible only at certain angles and distances. Technicians reported that its pitch shifted subtly with changes in lighting and the movement of observers. The sound was not picked up consistently by recording equipment, reinforcing the eerie impression that the coffin responded directly to the presence of living beings. Some researchers felt their pulse quicken or their vision narrow when the hum intensified, hinting at a subtle influence over human perception. Mineral analysis revealed trace elements that are rarely found in European deposits, suggesting the amber originated from distant regions. This composition, unusual for Eastern European artifacts, hinted at ancient trade routes that transported materials across vast distances. The presence of such rare inclusions raised further questions about the sarcophagus's original creators and the purpose of combining these specific elements, which seemed to amplify the coffin's strange properties. Light passing through the translucent surface created unusual refractions, sometimes resembling shapes that were difficult to identify. Shadows shifted unnaturally along the walls, giving the impression of figures moving just beyond clear sight. Observers noted that no two viewing angles produced the same optical patterns, reinforcing the belief that the amber was somehow interacting with the environment, bending light in ways that defied ordinary explanation. Protective barriers placed by curators failed to fully contain the object's influence, as staff experienced dizziness and headaches despite precautionary measures. Even with gloves, distance restrictions, and controlled air circulation, the coffin seemed to exert a subtle pressure on those nearby. Some personnel reported a sense of being watched, while others described fleeting visions of motion beneath the amber's surface, adding an unsettling psychological layer to the physical phenomena. Historical records in Eastern European archives hinted at prior discoveries of the sarcophagus, all ending in sudden illness or unexplained deaths. Documents from the late 19th and early 20th centuries recount expeditions that handled the coffin with great caution, yet suffered immediate consequences. Medical accounts describe symptoms ranging from nausea and fatigue to sudden cardiac events, suggesting that the danger was not merely legend but repeatedly observed in real-world encounters. Microscopic cracks in the amber appeared to spread after handling, though no physical force was applied. Conservators examined the surface under high magnification and documented growth patterns inconsistent with normal stress fractures. Over time, these fissures formed delicate networks resembling veins, contributing to the perception that the coffin was living in some symbolic or inexplicable sense, as though the amber itself was an organism responding to disturbance. Electrical instruments frequently malfunctioned when brought near the sarcophagus, their readings spiking erratically. Geiger counters, voltmeters, and even basic magnetic sensors registered fluctuations that could not be attributed to standard environmental interference. This electrical irregularity suggested the coffin emitted some form of energy, whether physical, chemical, or otherwise unknown, further complicating the task of safely studying it. Investigators noted that prolonged exposure to the coffin correlated with subtle changes in perception, including blurred vision, disorientation, and hallucinations. Even seasoned researchers, trained to observe objectively, found themselves distracted by fleeting lights, colours, or forms that vanished when focused upon. Attempts to chart these experiences revealed no consistent pattern, leaving experts with the unnerving impression that the sarcophagus affected each individual differently, tailoring its influence in ways that remained impossible to quantify. Every attempt to fully understand the amber coffin deepened the mystery surrounding its origin and purpose, as tangible evidence of danger intertwined with inexplicable sensory phenomena, leaving a chilling awareness that some forces remain beyond human control. The guardian statues of Luxor, shadows stretched across the courtyard as the sun sank below the horizon, transforming familiar forms into ominous silhouettes. The towering statues, carved with meticulous precision during the New Kingdom period, seemed to absorb the fading light, creating shapes that appeared to shift when viewed from different angles. Travelers and guards alike described the sensation that the stone figures were aware, their eyes following any movement with an almost sentient focus. Stone surfaces seemed to absorb sound, leaving a hush that unsettled even the most seasoned observers. Footsteps that would normally echo across the open plaza disappeared into the quiet, replaced by a soft, almost imperceptible vibration emanating from the base of the statues. Visitors reported feeling their hearts beat louder in response, as though the statues themselves controlled the rhythm of the surrounding air. Cold drafts passed through the open plazas at night, inexplicably concentrated around the feet of the sculptures. Guards on night watch noted that temperatures near the statues could drop several degrees without explanation, while the rest of the temple grounds remained unaffected. Some believed these currents were natural, but repeated measurements suggested an anomaly that defied ordinary environmental patterns. Footsteps echoed unnaturally, sometimes delayed or multiplied, giving the impression that movement was happening where no one stood. Several guards reported hearing their own steps return in distorted sequences, leading to confusion and disorientation. Even when cameras were used, no source for the strange auditory phenomena could be detected, reinforcing the sense that the statues exerted influence over perception itself. Weathered features of the sculptures appeared to shift subtly when viewed in different lights, suggesting expressions that could not exist in solid stone. Smiles seemed to widen, frowns deepened, and eyes narrowed, as though reacting to the presence of onlookers. Scholars studying the statues noted that these changes were imperceptible in photographs, yet undeniable to the naked eye, adding to the enduring mystery surrounding these ancient guardians. Faint inscriptions etched into the bases of several statues began to reveal themselves under torchlight, lines of hieroglyphs previously thought too eroded to read. Scholars examining these markings discovered references to ceremonial guardianship and warnings that any disturbance during sacred hours would bring misfortune. Local legends claimed that those who attempted to trace or touch these inscriptions sometimes awoke disoriented or fell gravely ill, as if the words themselves carried a lingering power beyond mere stone and pigment. Records from the 19th century document the first accounts of guards falling ill after standing too long near the monuments, often without a clear cause. Reports from travelers, explorers, and colonial officials describe sudden fainting, nausea, and in some cases, fevers that appeared after prolonged exposure. These patterns repeated over decades, suggesting that proximity to the statues carried a persistent, unexplained risk to human health. Animal behavior near the statues became erratic. Cats, dogs, and birds avoided the area as though sensing a presence invisible to humans. Researchers conducting wildlife studies in the Luxor temples noted that even nocturnal animals changed their usual paths, often retreating hours before human observers arrived. These consistent reactions hinted at a broader sensitivity to the statues, implying that their influence extended beyond human perception. Surveillance equipment occasionally failed after being installed near the statues, displaying static or distorted imagery that did not correspond to the environment. Cameras captured blurred figures or shifting shadows that could not be attributed to wind or light. Electrical devices frequently experienced sudden power drops, and researchers reported that even simple flashlights flickered when positioned too close to the bases of the figures. Visitors reported feelings of dizziness, nausea, or disorientation when wandering the plazas alone after dark, as though unseen forces shifted the air itself. Local guides warned against lingering, recounting tales of tourists who became lost in the shadows despite clearly marked pathways. Ancient accounts, translated from hieroglyphs, describe the statues as protectors, their vigilance extending beyond mortal comprehension to safeguard sacred spaces. Architectural alignment of the statues created corridors of light and shadow that appeared to move with the observer, amplifying the sensation that the monuments were aware of human presence. Each step along the central avenue altered the interplay of darkness and illumination, making familiar landmarks appear alien and unpredictable. Researchers suggest this design may have served both ritual and protective purposes, but its exact intention remains elusive, leaving modern visitors unsettled and uncertain. The statues of Luxor guard their secrets silently, yet every flicker of movement, every drop in temperature, and every quiver of shadow reminds all who walk among them that some monuments were carved to watch over more than stone and sand. The Witch's Grave of Lancashire. Mists crept across the Lancashire moors, wrapping the landscape in a damp, silvery veil that blurred the lines between earth and sky. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, stretching over patches of tilled soil where rumours of an ancient grave had persisted for centuries. The locals whispered that even the winds carried warnings, as if the moors themselves were alive and aware of intruders daring to tread too close. In the 17th century, legends speak of a woman accused of witchcraft, her trial recorded in the parish archives of Lancaster. Historical notes recount her condemnation, but some entries are marked with marginal warnings, cryptic phrases that modern scholars have yet to fully interpret. Villagers claimed she had foretold that her burial site would curse those who disturbed it, a threat dismissed as superstition until events began to confirm it. Unearthed soil carried strange odours, a faint, metallic scent that unsettled even experienced diggers. Workers who attempted minor excavations often felt sudden chills or nausea, prompting them to abandon the site without explanation. Local accounts suggest that the air itself grew heavy around the grave, as though invisible eyes were watching every movement, calculating the cost of human curiosity. Church records detail the precise location of her interment, but even those armed with maps and historical texts struggled to pinpoint the grave exactly. Some historians argue that deliberate obfuscation may have been part of the burial process, intended to deter future disturbance. Others believe natural shifts in the moor's terrain over centuries have contributed to the grave's elusive positioning, complicating every modern attempt at study. Nighttime visitors reported hearing low murmurs or seeing shadows move unnaturally among the heather and grass. Accounts from the 1800s describe individuals who approached the site with lanterns, only to retreat in terror when spectral figures seemed to rise from the ground. Some claim to have seen faint glowing shapes that vanished when approached, leaving behind only the eerie silence of the moor. Stone markers near the grave appear unusually resistant to decay, carved from local sandstone yet seemingly impervious to centuries of weather. Each symbol is faint but deliberate, a combination of crosses, circles, and abstract glyphs that have baffled archaeologists and folklorists alike. Observers have noted that the carvings seem sharper after rainfall, as though freshly etched, hinting at a force beyond natural erosion. Animals avoided the area entirely. Sheep refused to graze nearby, and dogs would whine or turn back when brought within sight of the mound. Birds circled overhead in tight, agitated formations, and local hunters reported that even foxes skirted the perimeter. This unusual behavior contributed to the belief that the grave's influence extended beyond human perception, affecting the natural order itself. Diaries of local farmers and parishioners describe sudden illness, misfortune, or inexplicable accidents following attempts to disturb or investigate the site. One entry from 1724 mentions a man who fell gravely ill after turning over a stone near the mound, only to recover after leaving Lancashire entirely. Another recounts a small fire that broke out in a nearby barn under mysterious circumstances, coinciding with a visit from outsiders attempting to measure the grave. Fog-filled mornings revealed footprints and indentations in the soil that could not be traced to any known passerby. Some marks appeared to move over time, shifting locations when the moor was unobserved, leaving an impression that the earth itself resisted intrusion. Scholars and folklorists have speculated that such phenomena may have fueled local tales of spectral guardians, lending weight to centuries-old warnings. Recent surveys using modern instruments recorded erratic magnetic readings and subtle temperature fluctuations around the mound. Soil composition varied in ways that could not be explained by natural processes, prompting some geologists to call for further study. Yet even as instruments tracked anomalies, those who remained too long near the grave reported headaches, dizziness, and a persistent feeling of being watched, blending scientific observation with eerie human experience. Amid the rolling hills of Lancashire, even today, the witch's grave remains a place where history, superstition, and unexplained phenomena converge, a burial site whose reputation has only grown with each passing century. Visitors come seeking knowledge, yet the moor seems to guard its secrets jealously, allowing only fragments to surface for those daring enough to enter. The past, lying somewhere beneath the damp earth, waits silently, its warning through time still eluding understanding. The sealed chamber beneath Angkor Wat. Darkness swallowed the stone corridor as the team approached the newly uncovered section beneath Angkor Wat, revealing an entrance that had eluded scholars for centuries. The walls, covered in centuries of soot and mildew, hinted at a space rarely disturbed, yet something about the silence felt almost deliberate, as if the chamber itself resisted discovery. Engineers measured the shifting walls with careful precision, noting slight displacements that suggested centuries of pressure from the temple above. Each stone seemed deliberately placed, forming patterns that defied conventional construction methods known in the Khmer Empire, sparking debates among archaeologists about hidden architectural knowledge. Chilling drafts rose from unseen cracks, carrying the scent of wet earth and decay. Researchers reported a sudden drop in temperature whenever the team lingered too long near certain corners, prompting speculation that underground airflow patterns might conceal unknown voids or tunnels. Ancient markings glimmered faintly under the glow of portable lamps, revealing a script that bore a resemblance to Sanskrit and Old Khmer. Linguists and epigraphers struggled to interpret the symbols, particularly sequences that appeared to record ceremonial rites with references to unseen guardians and forbidden relics. The team hesitated at a narrow passage where rubble blocked most of the way forward. Even with modern tools, the route demanded extreme caution, and several members reported an instinctive feeling of being watched, as though the chamber itself exhaled a warning. Unearthly echoes bounced off the ceiling, magnifying every footstep and the clatter of instruments. Audio recordings later captured subtle tonal variations that did not correspond to the physical geometry of the chamber, prompting theories of acoustic anomalies or the presence of hollowed chambers beyond immediate sight. Metal scaffolding trembled under pressure as workers reinforced the passage for further exploration. Reports of vibrations occurring without visible cause fueled unease among the team, leading some to speculate that the site was imbued with forces beyond ordinary understanding. The floor gave strange, uneven resistance, with certain sections seeming softer or more compact than surrounding stone. Ground-penetrating radar revealed cavities beneath the surface, but the exact layout remained frustratingly elusive, deepening the impression that the chamber was intentionally labyrinthine. Layers of sediment revealed hidden patterns when carefully brushed aside, including small carvings and traces of pigments long thought to have faded. Archaeologists suggested these might indicate ritual use or a method to deter intruders, although the intent behind such measures remained a mystery. An inexplicable hum vibrated through the air, low and persistent, felt more than heard. Several team members reported headaches and nausea when standing in specific locations, an effect that dissipated when moving to other areas, raising questions about environmental hazards or unknown energies within the tomb. Humidity condensed on the walls like sweat, dripping in slow, irregular intervals. The moisture revealed subtle inscriptions previously invisible, hinting at further secrets yet to be uncovered, and emphasizing how the chamber had remained hidden and protected through time. Faint scratches suggested prior human presence, although no records indicated that any explorers had entered this specific chamber before modern times. Skeptics debated whether these marks were the work of ancient monks, looters, or something entirely different, adding a layer of enigma to the already tense investigation. A sudden stillness fell over the chamber as the team moved deeper, the echoes vanishing entirely. Instruments failed to record any electrical interference, yet all electronic equipment behaved erratically, suggesting an unknown phenomenon that defied conventional explanation. Tendrils of shadow seemed to shift across the walls as lamps flickered, revealing surfaces that were not perfectly aligned, as though the chamber itself was subtly moving. Attempts to photograph or scan these shifts produced inconsistent results, leaving observers with the unnerving impression that the tomb was alive in some incomprehensible sense. A hidden alcove revealed a small, intricately carved statue, partially buried in centuries of dust. Its design was unlike any documented Khmer sculpture, showing a figure entwined with serpentine shapes and obscure symbols, suggesting a ritual purpose long forgotten and a guardian presence whose meaning remained unknown. Silence returned, oppressive and total, as the team reached the heart of the chamber. No human voice could penetrate it, no sound seemed natural, and the air hung thick with anticipation. Even those accustomed to archaeological discovery felt the weight of something ancient, deliberate, and incomprehensibly powerful. As they prepared to exit, a faint vibration ran through the floor, so subtle that only those standing perfectly still noticed. It was a reminder that this chamber had secrets far beyond mere walls and inscriptions, and that its mysteries had been waiting silently for centuries to test those who dared to uncover them. The chamber seemed to breathe with a quiet intelligence, leaving a lingering question that refused to fade. What had remained hidden in Angkor Wat's depths, and why had it waited so long to be discovered? The pharaoh's daughter's mirror. Glimmers of light danced across the surface, yet the reflection seemed reluctant to show the present. For centuries, the mirror had rested in obscurity, its polished surface capturing more than mere images. Historians traced its origin to the reign of Akhenaten, linking it to his daughter Meritaten, though records provided only fragments of its ceremonial use. Legends whispered of its powers during rituals, where those who peered into it reported visions of figures long gone. The mirror had once occupied the inner chambers of Amarna, intended as a conduit between the mortal world and the divine. Its surface was said to hold fragments of consciousness, each scratch or imperfection marking an encounter with a past observer. Shadows stretched unnaturally when the mirror was uncovered in modern excavations. Scholars reported subtle movements in the reflection shapes that vanished when looked at directly, as if the mirror's memory had a will of its own. Light itself seemed to hesitate at the edges, reluctant to fully illuminate what lay within. Unexpected sensations plagued those near it. A low hum pervaded the room, rising and falling in a pattern that no one could explain. Temperatures dropped abruptly, yet only in certain corners, leaving visitors shivering, despite the warmth outside. These phenomena defied logic, yet were recorded in detailed notes by every researcher who approached them. Visions often came unbidden. Some claimed to see Meritaten herself fleetingly, as if she were rehearsing motions from ceremonies lost to time. Others glimpsed figures of unknown attendants, vanishing when focused on, leaving only the faintest outline lingering in the periphery. Each appearance lasted only moments, yet left a lingering impression of inevitability. Whispers of memory surfaced without cause. Observers found themselves recalling events they could not have witnessed, sensations tied to rituals they had never attended. These fragments of recollection left disquieting gaps, as though the mirror recorded more than images, absorbing consciousness itself. Reflections betrayed expectations. Even when empty, the glass seemed to shift, displaying subtle movements, as though responding to unspoken questions. Researchers noticed that objects in the room sometimes appeared displaced when viewed in the mirror, a subtle distortion that undermined confidence in their own senses. Patterns emerged over repeated study. Those who spent longer periods with the mirror reported stronger phenomena, intense déjà vu, fleeting shadows, and whispers carried by no identifiable source. Notes suggested that proximity intensified awareness of the mirror's latent presence, drawing observers into a rhythm that was not their own. Echoes of prior visitors seemed embedded in the surface. Written observations revealed an uncanny repetition of phrases and reactions across decades of study. Researchers could not escape the sensation that their actions were being mirrored back in ways both literal and metaphorical, as though they were part of an ongoing performance dictated by the mirror itself. Perceptions of time fractured around the artifact. Minutes felt like hours, and hours could vanish without notice. Some described returning from brief absences to find notes completed in handwriting they did not recognize, though no one else had entered. The mirror's influence appeared to span space as well as time, blurring the line between observer and observed. Curiosity compelled repeated exposure, even when it brought discomfort. The mirror demanded attention, drawing viewers closer despite warnings recorded in historical notes. Those who resisted too long reported lingering unease, as if the object had already marked their presence and waited patiently for the next engagement. Unseen presences seemed tethered to the glass. Figures appeared only peripherally, gestures frozen yet oddly animated, and reflections occasionally betrayed a consciousness entirely separate from the observer. It was as if the mirror remembered everything it had ever seen, holding each moment in silent captivity. Lingering sensations persisted after leaving the room. Researchers reported phantom movements and whispered words that could not be traced to any source. Even outside controlled environments, the memory of the mirror haunted them, an unshakable impression that lingered at the edges of perception. Questions remained unanswered, despite decades of scrutiny. No method could fully explain the mirror's peculiar behavior, its capacity to reflect more than mere appearances, or its tendency to distort reality in subtle, insistent ways. Each encounter reinforced the sense that the mirror's true power was only partially understood. A single glance seemed enough to awaken the past, to summon images and sounds of long-forgotten ceremonies, and to leave an indelible mark upon the mind of the observer. The mirror waited quietly, yet its still surface hinted that it remembered far more than anyone could ever know. The shipwreck tomb of the Baltic Sea. The cold waters of the Baltic Sea have long concealed secrets beneath their grey, restless surface. Among the ice-streaked currents and drifting fog lies a wreck that divers would later call the shipwreck tomb, a vessel whose purpose was lost to centuries, but whose presence has haunted those who dared to explore it. It was in the summer of 2015 when a team of professional divers, mapping the seabed near the coast of Sweden, stumbled upon a wooden hull remarkably preserved by the frigid waters. Unlike ordinary shipwrecks, this one carried signs of a deliberate burial at sea, with objects arranged in careful order, as though a ceremony had been performed before it sank. The divers, trained in handling delicate underwater sights, first noticed a series of chests secured with iron locks. Inside were relics of a long-forgotten nobility, ornate jewellery, silver coins, and ceremonial daggers, their edges dulled by time yet still gleaming with a strange allure. Among these treasures was a small, intricately carved box that seemed out of place with the rest of the cargo. Its wood was darker, almost black, and the carvings depicted faces that twisted in silent anguish. When one diver lifted it to the surface, a sudden chill swept through the boat, as if the sea itself had exhaled. Word of the discovery spread quickly, and curiosity brought experts from museums and historical societies across Europe. The artifacts were catalogued and photographed, but the carved box drew an unusual amount of attention. Those who handled it reported feeling lightheaded, a creeping unease that lingered long after they returned to shore. One archaeologist confessed that, while documenting the object, he thought he saw fleeting shadows in the corners of the room, shadows that vanished the moment he turned to look. Others dismissed it as fatigue or imagination, yet the sensation was shared by several members of the team independently, a pattern that would soon grow impossible to ignore. The shipwreck tomb's history was traced through old shipping records and naval logs. Scholars identified it as a vessel belonging to the Swedish crown in the early 1600s, used to transport goods and sometimes valuables to and from the Baltic ports. But these records offered no hint of the extraordinary cargo found within. Some suggested the items were meant as tribute for distant rulers, while others speculated that the box in particular held a ritual significance lost to history. No one could explain why the vessel had been deliberately sunk in such a remote section of the sea, far from known trade routes, or why its contents remained untouched for centuries. As the divers returned for further exploration, strange phenomena began to escalate. Equipment malfunctioned without cause, sonar readings flickered with ghostly echoes, and instruments that had worked perfectly the day before suddenly failed. One evening, a diver reported hearing faint whispers through his headset, soft words that seemed to echo from nowhere yet carried an unmistakable urgency. Others aboard the support ship later described feelings of being watched, as though the ocean itself harboured an unseen presence. Some dismissed these incidents as coincidental, yet no explanation could account for the unnerving pattern of disturbances. The dark box became the subject of cautious study, but no one dared to open it entirely. Attempts to examine it revealed that its lid resisted every tool and method, locking itself in place, as if the centuries had welded it shut. The deeper curiosity went, the more persistent the unease became, seeping into dreams and waking hours alike. Journal entries left by team members spoke of unshakable dread and fleeting glimpses of figures in water-streaked reflections, hints of something that should not have been disturbed. Even those who tried to remain rational found themselves questioning their perceptions, their own memories, and the very nature of the discovery. The shipwrecked tomb of the Baltic Sea, once a forgotten vessel at the bottom of the world's northern waters, became a centre of fascination and fear. Its treasures had survived centuries untouched, yet they carried with them an intangible weight that no historian or diver could fully measure. Each dive brought new questions rather than answers, shadows deepened by the silence beneath the waves, and a sense that the sea was guarding its secrets jealously. The divers, once eager for knowledge and discovery, began to understand that some things hidden by the ocean are hidden for a reason. The box seemed to pulse with life as it rose from the depths, and no one could explain why. The Tomb of the Golden Skulls, a dense canopy of jungle, concealed the entrance to a Mayan tomb that had lain undisturbed for centuries. Moss-covered stones framed a narrow passage, and the air was thick with humidity and the faint scent of decayed foliage. At first glance, the chamber appeared ordinary, yet subtle arrangements hinted at careful intentioned skulls set atop pedestals, gold leaf glinting where torches caught their edges. Their placement suggested more than ritual. It whispered of purpose that defied easy understanding. The tomb, located near the ancient city of Lamanai in present-day Belize, has roots dating back to the late Classic period of the Maya civilization, roughly between 600 and 900 CE. Archaeological surveys noted that this site had been largely ignored until satellite imaging revealed subsurface anomalies suggesting hidden chambers beneath the forest floor. Scholars were puzzled, as most Mayan tombs discovered in the region contained modest offerings rather than the ostentatious display of gilded human skulls that marked this site. Cautiously approached the excavation teams, documenting every step with meticulous care. Each artifact was measured, sketched, and photographed before being moved, yet the skulls themselves resisted being fully catalogued. Some appeared to shift subtly between observations, their orientations slightly altered despite careful placement. Small, deliberate rearrangements suggested forces beyond human interference, prompting whispered speculation among researchers about protective curses or ancient guardians left to watch over the dead. Local villagers have long told stories of spirits guarding sacred sites in the jungle, warning outsiders that those who disturb such places may suffer strange fates. The legend surrounding the golden skulls spoke of a priest who had sought to preserve knowledge of the afterlife, crafting the skulls as vessels to hold memories of the departed. Though few believed the tales literally, the consistency of these warnings over generations added weight to the eerie occurrences noted by the excavation team. Sounds within the chamber betrayed an unnatural quality. Footsteps echoed unevenly, distant from their source, and faint rattles came from corners of the tomb with no wind or moving air. Some team members reported a metallic tang in the air, a sense of cold that clung to skin despite the tropical heat. Every new observation seemed to deepen the unease, as if the tomb itself were reacting to attention, and the golden skulls appeared to radiate a presence that could not be measured by instruments. Amid the chaos of shifting relics, one discovery was particularly unsettling: a set of small bones that did not match any human template previously catalogued. They were delicate, elongated, and intricately carved with faint inscriptions that glimmered in torchlight. Attempts to interpret these markings yielded no known Mayan glyphs, suggesting either a forgotten dialect or a symbolic language designed for purposes outside mortal comprehension. Their presence within the tomb added a layer of mystery, hinting at knowledge that the ancient civilization had sought to conceal. Every night, researchers recorded subtle changes in the chamber. Skulls that had been flush against stone walls were sometimes found perched atop pedestals or angled toward unseen direction. Even light behaved strangely. Shadows did not always align with torch sources, bending and curling as if observing the visitors. These phenomena were too consistent to be coincidences, yet there was no discernible pattern or explanation, leaving each observer to wrestle with the limits of perception and reason. The golden skulls themselves became more than artifacts. They were symbols of an enigma that refused clarity. The combination of craftsmanship, supernatural suggestion, and historical placement demanded questions without answers. Researchers documented everything meticulously, yet the more they uncovered, the less they understood, as though the tomb had been constructed not merely to preserve remains, but to test the resolve and sanity of those who dared to enter. In the deepest recesses of the chamber, where light barely reached, one skull reflected a faint, unnatural glow, catching the attention of every witness who peered too closely. Its surface seemed alive with faint undulations, as if whispering a language lost to time, and a palpable sense of warning hung in the air. Those who approached felt a compulsion to step back, yet a persistent curiosity drew the gaze forward, binding observer and artifact in a silent unbroken tension. Eerily alive, the skulls seemed to watch the team as they documented them, baffling everyone and leaving each researcher with the unshakable sense of being measured in return. The priest's chamber in Malta's hypogeum. The chamber lies deep beneath the surface of Malta, carved entirely from the island's soft limestone. Its walls rise in smooth, deliberate curves, and the ceiling arches with concentric layers that create a hollow resonance. Shadows pool in recesses where uneven stone meets carved niches, giving the impression of figures lingering just out of sight. The dimly lit passage narrows before expanding into a central room, a vast hollow that feels far larger than its measured dimensions suggest, as if the rock itself bends perception. Constructed during the Neolithic period, around 3,600 to 2,500 BCE, the hypogeum served as a complex of subterranean temples and burial chambers. Archaeologists believe the priestly class of the island conducted rites within these spaces, guiding the dead and performing ceremonies that linked the living to unseen forces. Written records are absent, yet the meticulous alignment of the chambers with solstices and celestial events hints at a level of sophistication that exceeds mere burial practices. Sounds behave strangely within the priest's chamber. Footsteps echo unevenly, and faint vibrations carry through stone floors in patterns that do not match any known acoustics. Whispers seem to form at the corners of hearing, low and fragmented, as if messages are passing between walls. Even when the chamber is empty, recordings capture faint murmurs, indistinct but unmistakable, leaving researchers to question whether the rock itself can hold memory. Those who descend into the hypogeum describe sudden disorientation and vertigo. The space appears to shift subtly, ceilings seeming closer in one moment and farther in the next, corners appearing deeper than they are. Instruments measuring temperature, pressure, and electromagnetic fields detect no anomalies, yet the physical sensations remain consistent. Visitors are left unnerved, their perception of reality subtly altered, a psychological echo of rituals performed millennia ago. Priestly functions were likely central to the chamber's design. Niches and altars suggest offerings of food, tools, and symbolic objects, placed with careful symmetry. Some carvings resemble stylized human forms with exaggerated features, interpreted by scholars as ancestral representations or intermediaries between worlds. The alignment of certain chambers with natural light during equinoxes reinforces the notion that the priests understood the influence of sun, shadow, and perception on those who entered. Patterns emerge from repeated observation. Carvings seem to catch light differently from one visit to the next. Walls absorb sound in unexpected ways, and the air carries a faint, almost imperceptible hum that rises and falls without source. Researchers catalogue these phenomena meticulously, noting a consistency that defies explanation. The chamber appears responsive, interacting with presence and attention, as if aware of each observer. The psychological impact on those within the space intensifies over time. Many report a feeling of being watched or followed by unseen eyes, sometimes accompanied by a tightening in the chest or a sense of dread that deepens as exploration continues. Attempts to remain objective are challenged by fleeting glimpses of shadowed figures or subtle movements at the edge of vision, leaving even experienced archaeologists questioning whether the experiences are internal projections or external influence. New findings continue to emerge despite centuries of study. In one alcove, small engraved stones were discovered, bearing patterns that appear to replicate vocalizations heard within the chamber. Their arrangement implies intentional encoding, perhaps a way to preserve sound or memory across generations. The implications are unsettling, suggesting the chamber was designed not only for burial, but for interaction, a space where auditory experience was as critical as visual or tactile observation. Even the faintest light is transformed within the priest's chamber. Sunlight that slips through narrow shafts casts shifting shapes that seem deliberate, highlighting certain carvings or drawing attention to otherwise unnoticed alcoves. The effect is hypnotic, compelling those present to focus on points that might otherwise be ignored, creating an involuntary engagement with the environment. The chamber seems alive in its orchestration, a deliberate combination of stone, shadow, and sound. Researchers cannot explain why the whispers grow sharper when attention drifts, or why the patterns in sound and shadow resist consistent measurement, leaving the chamber perpetually enigmatic. Some who linger too long report glimpsing figures at the edges of vision, vanishing the moment they try to focus. Never has anyone emerged from the hypogeum without the sensation that the walls themselves were aware of every step taken. The pyramid that eats light. Across the arid plains of northern Sudan, a newly discovered pyramid rose from the desert like a shadow against the horizon. Its weathered limestone reflected the heat in uneven bursts, yet in certain angles the stone seemed to swallow light entirely, leaving the edges blurred and undefined. The stark geometry of the structure contrasted sharply with the rolling dunes, as though it existed outside the natural order, demanding attention while resisting understanding. A sudden shimmer drew the first attention of satellite surveyors and archaeologists alike. Early photographs captured sections of the pyramid that appeared to flicker or vanish when the sun moved, a phenomenon that confounded experts and led to speculation about unknown optical effects. Expeditions organized by Sudanese authorities in 2018 noted the unusual way daylight seemed to be absorbed, casting the surrounding desert into deeper shadow even under a noon Sunday. Rising stone walls formed terraces and stepped levels that defied conventional design. Unlike the more famous Nubian pyramids at Meroe, this monument lacked smooth faces, yet its angles were precise, and no tool marks were immediately visible. Some surfaces reflected no light at all, leaving certain facets almost invisible from specific perspectives. This phenomenon became the central puzzle for researchers, prompting careful measurement and repeated observation. Unseen shadows disturbed those who approached. Guides reported feeling cold drafts where no wind existed, and explorers claimed that objects left in bright sunlight appeared dimmer or disappeared entirely when brought near certain walls. Cameras failed to capture consistent images, recording voids where the pyramid's surfaces should have appeared. The structure seemed to challenge perception, creating an unsettling sense of instability for anyone observing it directly. Observers reported a sense of vertigo when walking the terraces, as if the pyramid shifted slightly beneath their feet. Even drones and robotic devices, deployed to map the site from above, transmitted readings that contradicted visual observations. Video feeds occasionally flickered, showing areas of darkness that could not exist in natural light, and those monitoring from a distance often felt a subtle unease, as if the pyramid itself watched their progress. At nightfall, the pyramid seemed to interact with moonlight in ways just as perplexing as with the Sunday silver rays appeared to be absorbed along certain faces, leaving faintly glowing edges where stone met shadow. Explorers noted that the glow shifted slightly when they moved, creating illusions of hidden passageways or surfaces that weren't physically present. Even the air around the pyramid carried a subtle hum, a low vibration that seemed to originate from the monument itself, adding an auditory layer to its inexplicable presence. Instruments failed repeatedly, despite rigorous calibration. Light meters, thermal scanners, and LiDAR equipment produced contradictory readings, sometimes detecting nothing where solid stone should have been, or registering temperatures far below ambient levels. Attempts to explain the anomalies through atmospheric or magnetic interference yielded no answers, leaving scientists questioning the limits of their own observation methods. Patterns emerged during continued study. Photographs taken minutes apart revealed slight changes in surface appearance, and sun shadows stretched and warped unpredictably. Lines of sight shifted in ways that made distant corners disappear or reappear, creating the impression of a structure in motion. Researchers began cataloguing these inconsistencies, noting that the pyramid's interaction with light followed no known physical rules. Curiously, no wildlife approached the pyramid closely. Birds circled overhead but never landed on its terraces, and desert mammals avoided the immediate vicinity entirely. Researchers noted that even insects seemed scarce, as though some unseen boundary repelled life. This absence of natural activity contrasted sharply with the bustling desert ecosystem surrounding the site, raising questions about whether the pyramid emitted a subtle field or energy that influenced its environment beyond human perception. Historical context suggests that the pyramid may date back to the late Napatan period, around 700–300 BCE, during the Kingdom of Kush. While its location corresponds to other regional burial sites, its anomalous properties set it apart from contemporary structures. Scholars have debated whether the design had ritual significance or was intended to convey symbolic meaning, though no inscriptions or artifacts have been recovered to confirm these theories. At the edge of perception, the pyramid seems to assert its own presence. Small stones cast shadows that do not align with the sun, and explorers report brief flickers of shapes crossing their vision. Light appears to pool and drain in ways that defy understanding, giving the impression that the monument is alive to observation, reacting to the curiosity and attention of those who approach. Swallowed, so completely is the light by the pyramid that no one has yet explained why, leaving both instruments and eyes uncertain of what lies within. The cursed scrolls of Ras Shamra. Excavators uncovered a series of ancient scrolls while digging near the ruins of Ras Shamra, the site of the ancient city of Ugarit in modern-day Syria. The scrolls were hidden beneath layers of rubble in a collapsed chamber, preserved by the arid climate and sealed by remnants of clay and stone. At first glance, they appeared ordinary, yet the meticulous care with which they were stored hinted at a significance beyond mundane record-keeping. Dating back to roughly 1400 BCE, the scrolls belong to a civilization that thrived as a cultural and trade hub on the eastern Mediterranean. Ugarit was renowned for its advanced writing system, cuneiform inscriptions, and complex pantheon of gods. Scholars believe the scrolls may have contained both ritual instructions and historical records, bridging human knowledge with the divine practices of the time. Wrapped in fragile linen, each scroll bore markings that glimmered faintly under torchlight, suggesting the use of pigments and gold dust now mostly faded. Some scrolls were larger than expected, rolled tightly yet surprisingly intact, with the surface of the parchment revealing the careful hands of scribes who had spent hours ensuring each symbol and line was precise. The craftsmanship alone suggested the scrolls were objects of reverence, not mere administrative documents. Within the laboratory, chemical analysis revealed traces of resins and oils on the scrolls, but some compounds were previously unknown to modern science. The mixture appeared to react subtly to light and air, occasionally releasing faint odors or causing the ink to shimmer unpredictably. Researchers noted that the effect intensified when multiple scrolls were handled together, creating an almost imperceptible energy that seemed to hum through the room. From the very beginning, attempts to decipher the texts quickly proved frustrating. Linguists familiar with Ugaritic cuneiform noted unusual phrases and sequences that did not appear in any other known writings from the region. Even familiar words were arranged in ways that resisted conventional translation, leaving translators to wonder whether the scrolls contained a secret language or code intended for specific ritual purposes. Strange phenomena occurred during handling. Translators reported sudden chills in the room, faint whispers that seemed to echo the sounds of the cuneiform, and minor accidents that disrupted careful work. Some researchers developed intense headaches or feelings of dizziness, prompting a pause in the study. While skeptics attributed these events to stress or superstition, the consistency of the experiences across multiple teams made dismissal difficult. Efforts to document the scrolls using photography or scanning equipment yielded inconsistent results. Some symbols appeared blurred, doubled, or entirely missing in images, even though they were clearly visible. Digital recordings occasionally picked up low-frequency vibrations or subtle shadows that had no discernible source, as if the scrolls themselves resisted being fully captured or translated into modern formats. Repeated symbols emerged as a focus of study. Certain characters appeared clustered together in patterns that suggested invocations or warnings. These sequences often appeared near passages describing storms, battles, or rituals meant to influence fate, hinting at a deliberate encoding of power or caution. Scholars noted that the scrolls seemed to intertwine historical record and esoteric instruction in a way that blurred the line between practical information and something far more unsettling. Experts debated the scrolls' true purpose. Some argued they were ceremonial manuals meant to guide priests through sacred rites, while others suggested they were warnings intended to protect knowledge deemed dangerous. Disagreements intensified when translated passages referenced forces beyond human comprehension, including curses invoked upon those who misread or misused the text. The debates only heightened the sense that the scrolls themselves were guardians of their own secrets. Ritual significance became impossible to ignore. Symbols on the scrolls corresponded to celestial events, seasonal cycles, and the timing of local festivals, indicating that reading or performing the instructions may have been intended to align with natural and divine forces. Certain passages appeared to dictate actions for controlling weather, ensuring prosperity, or even punishing enemies, suggesting that these documents were not merely descriptive, but prescriptive, designed to shape outcomes in the real world. A lingering unease settled over the chambers where the scrolls were studied. Despite precautions, each team that spent extended hours translating the texts reported subtle misfortunes, equipment failing, documents smudging inexplicably, or minor injuries occurring without explanation. The scrolls seemed to resist full comprehension, leaving a palpable sense that the knowledge contained within them was both powerful and perilous. Even as the scrolls rest in their protective cases, faint traces of movement across the parchment hint that their warnings have not yet finished reaching those who dare to read. The lost catacombs of Paris. Torchlight flickered across the walls, revealing a labyrinth of stone corridors that twisted deeper into Paris than any official map accounted for. Dust hung in stagnant air, and every uneven surface seemed to whisper of centuries of human passage. The catacombs extended far beyond the sections normally open to the public, forming a maze that had claimed the attention and sometimes the lives of explorers daring enough to enter. Loose stones shifted underfoot, creating sudden echoes that reverberated unpredictably through the tunnels. Footsteps from earlier visitors seemed to linger unnaturally, and small collapses reminded those who ventured there that even the slightest misstep could become catastrophic. The ground itself seemed to resist exploration, folding into hidden pits and dead ends that appeared without warning. Symbols carved centuries ago marred the limestone, etched by unknown hands. Some were simple initials or dates, while others formed complex patterns whose meanings have baffled historians. Scholars have debated whether these markings were warnings, memorials, or part of a forgotten ritual language meant to convey messages only the initiated could understand. Fragments of pottery and tools lay abandoned in some chambers, their presence hinting at centuries-old maintenance or secret rituals. Archaeologists noted that certain artifacts were deliberately positioned near narrow passageways, almost as if to guide or mislead those who entered. The placement suggested a knowledge of the labyrinth that exceeded the ordinary, implying that someone or something had shaped these tunnels with purpose beyond commerce or storage. Echoes bounced unexpectedly, carrying whispers from distant chambers that seemed almost too precise to be random. Explorers described hearing their own footsteps repeated back to them in ways that made distances impossible to judge, as though the tunnels themselves were mocking the human sense of orientation. These auditory distortions fed a growing unease that few researchers could rationally explain. Corridors doubled back without warning, looping in configurations that defied logic. Maps produced during expeditions often proved unreliable, with previously charted areas vanishing or appearing in new forms on subsequent visits. This unpredictable architecture created a sense of being watched, a psychological tension that mounted with each unmarked turn and unseen junction. A sudden stillness descended, smothering the usual trickle of air that should have moved through the subterranean network. Breathing became heavier, and the silence seemed alive, pressing against ears and thoughts alike. Even the most experienced urban explorers reported a creeping dread in these moments, as though the catacombs themselves held memories of the many who had vanished within their depth. Temperature readings fluctuated wildly in certain sections, dropping to near-freezing levels in areas surrounded by the same stone that remained warmer, just meters away. Moisture seemed to gather unpredictably, creating slick surfaces even in corridors that should have been dry. Explorers reported that these sudden shifts in climate coincided with sensations of vertigo or disorientation, as though the catacombs themselves were subtly manipulating the senses of anyone navigating them. Faint scuttling sounded from unseen corners, adding to the mounting sense of unease. Rats and other small creatures were present, yet their movements often coincided with inexplicable drafts or subtle shifts in shadows, blurring the line between natural causes and something more sinister. These fleeting movements kept explorers on edge, forcing attention to every crevice and creaking stone. Occasional inscriptions in red ochre appeared on walls, their meaning eluding even the most experienced historians. Some resembled warnings, while others seemed to depict distorted human figures entwined with animals or abstract shapes. These markings were far rarer than the common initials or dates, and their placement often corresponded to junctions where corridors split or dead-ended, suggesting a deliberate attempt to manipulate or intimidate intruders navigating the labyrinth. Accounts from earlier explorers reveal a long history of disappearances and near misses. Documents from the 18th and 19th centuries describe workers and thrill-seekers who entered uncharted chambers only to vanish without a trace. Some reports mention screams echoing through the catacombs, but follow-up expeditions found nothing, leaving historians and authorities to puzzle over how the underground network could hide so many secrets in plain sight. A distant glow pulsed intermittently, emanating from chambers that should have been devoid of light. The source remained unidentified, sometimes flickering in response to movement or attention, giving the impression that the tunnels were alive to observation. Explorers who pursued the glow often found themselves disoriented, emerging in areas far from where they had entered, as though the catacombs themselves were reshaping their path. Even after exiting the tunnels, a lingering sense of the catacombs' reach persisted, as if the stone corridors had left a mark on those who had seen their depths. Shadows within the passages hinted at more than architectural complexity, suggesting chambers that refused to be found by ordinary means. The Spirit Tomb of Okinawa. During a wartime excavation in northern Okinawa, workers uncovered a tomb hidden within jagged limestone cliffs, its entrance long concealed beneath dense foliage. The site's isolation suggested deliberate secrecy, preserved through generations of local knowledge. Early reports connected it to high-ranking figures of the Ryukyu kingdom, though precise records were scarce, and much of the tomb's purpose remained enigmatic. Artifacts revealed traces of ceremonial pigments, soot, and worn implements, arranged with precise care. Small clay figurines and pottery shards formed patterns that seemed intentional rather than random, implying rituals meant to honor or protect the spirits of the deceased. Experts noted that the spatial arrangement did not match common funerary practices in Okinawa, hinting at customs that had vanished from collective memory. Locals spoke of the site in hushed tones before its rediscovery, recounting tales of restless spirits guarding the cliffs. Oral history suggested that disturbances had previously led to illness or misfortune, though no formal documentation existed. These stories added an air of foreboding, cautioning even seasoned archaeologists that the tomb was more than a simple burial chamber. Initial examinations detected unusual anomalies in the tomb's environment. Sensors recorded sudden drops and rises in temperature, intermittent electrical failures, and inconsistent air pressure. These irregularities occurred with startling consistency whenever human presence approached, baffling scientists who could find no conventional explanation for the recurring disturbances. Sudden illness struck several individuals who spent extended time near the tomb. Workers reported dizziness, nausea, and rapid heart rates within hours of entry. Yet these symptoms sometimes affected only a portion of the team. Doctors could find no pathogen or chemical cause, and the effects often subsided once the affected individuals exited the area, leaving researchers unsettled by the selective nature of the phenomenon. Objects shifted inexplicably inside the tomb. Small stones, bowls, and fragments of woven mats were discovered in locations different from their original placement, even under careful observation. Natural explanations such as drafts or vibrations could not account for the scale and frequency of these movements, deepening the sense that the tomb itself resisted intrusion. Fragments of textiles and ceremonial cords suggested that offerings had been left as protective measures, possibly to maintain balance between the living and the dead. Analysis revealed that these materials contained residues of plant oils and ash, consistent with known Ryukyuan rituals, reinforcing the idea that the tomb had a sacred function beyond mere burial. Researchers speculated on the cause of these effects. Anthropologists proposed that centuries-old rituals may have intentionally created a space designed to ward off intruders. Paranormal investigators suggested that spiritual activity could influence physical matter, while environmental scientists considered geomagnetic anomalies and subterranean airflow as potential explanations. A sudden stillness often followed periods of movement inside the tomb, suffocating the sound of footsteps and making every breath feel audible. Many explorers described a tangible weight pressing upon their chests and a sensation of being observed, sensations that persisted even in well-lit areas outside the tomb, leaving an uneasy impression that lingered long after departure. Occasional inscriptions in red ochre adorned the walls, showing distorted human forms intertwined with abstract shapes. These markings were rare and frequently located near junctions or dead ends, suggesting that whoever created them intended to influence those navigating the labyrinthine space. The precise meaning of these symbols remained unknown, heightening both curiosity and apprehension. Accounts from local historians documented sporadic disappearances and near accidents over the centuries, though official records were sparse. Tales described explorers who became disoriented or failed to return, fueling speculation that the tomb's guardianship persisted long after the original interments. A lingering presence remained near the chamber even when sealed for study. Visitors reported fleeting shadows, sudden chills, and a sense that eyes followed their movements. Instruments sometimes recorded inexplicable electromagnetic spikes, as if the tomb itself acknowledged the presence of outsiders, quietly resisting intrusion. Even as excavation teams packed their tools and departed, the air around the tomb seemed heavier, carrying a tension that no one could measure. And at night, when silence enveloped the cliffs, the tomb seemed to hum faintly, as though it remembered every footstep and every gaze that had ever dared to enter. When left undisturbed, the spirit tomb of Okinawa seemed to watch, waiting for the next visitor to awaken what had long been sleeping. The Iron Coffin of London. In the heart of Victorian London, a narrow alley concealed a discovery that would unsettle both residents and officials alike. Beneath crumbling brickwork and soot-stained walls, workers unearthed a coffin forged entirely of iron, unlike any burial known from the period. Its heavy, riveted construction suggested deliberate effort to contain something inside, though records of its origin remained sparse. Around 1873, records indicate the coffin's existence was first noted in municipal archives, when a builder reported unearthing it during renovations near Clerkenwell. The documents, though incomplete, described an unusual black liquid seeping from the seams and a strong, persistent odour that could not be traced to any known source. Officials at the time ordered the container resealed, yet whispers of its presence spread quickly through newspapers and local gossip. Residents reported strange occurrences in the surrounding neighbourhood after the coffin was brought to light. Windows rattled at odd hours, inexplicable chills moved through rooms, and a faint metallic smell persisted in the air. Some claimed to see shadowy figures near the alley at night, fleeting glimpses that could not be captured or confirmed. Fear took hold, as even seasoned Londoners, accustomed to industrial grime and superstition, found the reports disturbing. Investigators noted peculiarities in the iron itself. The surface was etched with fine grooves that formed patterns resembling lettering but defied translation. Attempts to document and preserve these markings produced inconsistent results. Photographs captured some details, yet others vanished as if the grooves themselves had shifted. The coffin seemed to resist full comprehension, defying both scientific and artisanal analysis. A sudden odour emerged whenever the coffin was moved, a sharp, acrid scent reminiscent of burning metal mixed with decay. Workers handling it experienced dizziness, mild fainting, and an uneasy awareness that grew more intense the longer they remained near. Even attempts to enclose the coffin within sealed rooms failed to contain the aroma, which would return unpredictably and without an apparent source. Coroners found a troubling pattern in those who came into close contact with the iron coffin. Several developed unexplained ailments ranging from high fever to heart irregularities, and in extreme cases, sudden death occurred. Despite careful investigation, no bacterial, chemical, or environmental cause could account for these outcomes, leaving physicians and public health officials both alarmed and mystified. Artifacts suggested the coffin had been constructed with extraordinary precision and purpose. Reinforced iron sheets, interlocking rivets, and a hidden inner compartment hinted at ritualistic or protective intent. The interior was lined with layers of fabric, now degraded, that bore stains resisting chemical analysis. Historians speculated that such measures may have been designed to contain something living, spiritual, or otherwise, that posed danger if freed. Examination of surrounding documents revealed a series of obscure references to similar iron coffins in 18th and 19th century London burial records, often tied to individuals whose deaths were sudden or unexplained. Some entries noted neighbours reporting faint cries or strange sounds emanating from crypts, while others described families abandoning properties near the burial sites. These historical echoes hinted that the coffin in Clerkenwell might be part of a broader, shadowy practice of containing not just bodies, but something far more enigmatic. Suspicious patterns appeared in timing and location. Those who approached the coffin alone reported the most intense symptoms, while groups experienced milder effects, suggesting that proximity and attention may play a role. Local lore expanded alongside these observations, with some believing the coffin functioned as a deterrent against tampering, and others whispering that it housed a curse of vengeance from a forgotten age. Despite repeated attempts to move or study the coffin in controlled conditions, all interventions were thwarted by minor accidents, mechanical failure, or sudden illnesses among participants. Even advanced equipment could not capture the full nature of the anomalies, reinforcing the coffin's reputation as a vessel of both physical and psychological influence. Each attempt left observers more wary, as if the object itself demanded respect or obedience. A shadow lingered over the alley long after the coffin was returned to its concealed location, a presence unmeasured yet undeniably felt. The neighbourhood remained uneasy, with stories passed down to subsequent generations about the black liquid, the shifting marks, and the inexplicable deaths tied to a single piece of iron. Even when hidden beneath layers of brick and dust, the iron coffin of London seemed to pulse with a vigilance that no living eye could ignore. The Jade Tomb of Xi'an. At the outskirts of Xi'an, archaeologists uncovered a tomb whose brilliance rivaled the grandeur of the most celebrated finds in Chinese history. Set beneath a modest hill, the structure had remained undisturbed for centuries, its existence hinted at only in fragmented local lore and historical texts. The surrounding soil revealed faint traces of elaborate landscaping, suggesting the tomb's builders intended it as both a final resting place and a testament to artistic mastery. Excavation teams uncovered chambers lined with intricately carved jade tiles, each panel polished to an almost mirror-like finish. The corridors were narrow, yet the weight of the stone ceilings and the meticulous placement of jade suggested deliberate attention to both aesthetics and preservation. Every corner displayed signs of craftsmanship designed to awe and to intimidate, with geometric patterns and symbolic motifs repeating in ways that defied casual observation. Craftsmen had embedded small amounts of gold along the edges of the jade panels, forming delicate filigree that caught the flicker of lanterns during excavation. These golden accents were not merely decorative, they reflected light in unexpected ways, producing faint glimmers that shifted as workers moved through the corridors. The interplay of jade and gold lent the tomb an ethereal, almost living quality, as if the walls themselves breathed with the light of centuries past. Local historians remarked on the tomb's unusual alignment with nearby mountain ranges and the rising sun, suggesting that its creators possessed knowledge of astronomy and geomancy. Ancient records hinted that those buried within were not ordinary nobles, but figures of immense status, possibly linked to dynastic secrets that had never fully reached the written histories of Xi'an. This combination of skill, symbolism, and secrecy created an atmosphere that was both mesmerizing and foreboding. Unusual sounds echoed through the chambers as the excavation progressed. Some workers reported faint whispers or clicks that seemed to originate from the walls themselves, while others described the sensation of cold air moving against their necks despite the absence of ventilation. No mechanical explanation could account for these occurrences, and yet they persisted, increasing in frequency whenever the team lingered near certain chambers. Scientists noted that the jade tiles were unusually thick and unusually dense, resisting standard analysis and tools used to measure hardness and composition. Some fragments appeared to have minute inclusions that reacted unpredictably to light and touch, causing instruments to produce inconsistent readings. This resistance to examination added to the tomb's aura of mystery, leaving researchers both fascinated and unsettled. Unexpected deaths followed the tomb's unveiling. A lead engineer collapsed without warning, while another worker experienced a fatal heart attack shortly after handling a jade panel. Local authorities recorded incidents that ranged from sudden illness to severe accidents with no clear cause, prompting speculation that the tomb carried more than aesthetic or historical significance. Each loss amplified the fear surrounding the site, deterring some experts from returning while drawing others eager to understand the cause. Artifacts gleamed beneath the lanterns, revealing miniature carvings of animals, ceremonial vessels, and depictions of rituals whose meanings had long been obscured. These objects hinted at a culture of immense ritual importance, yet the very beauty that enthralled observers seemed to carry a weight, as if the tomb's artistry were both a treasure and a trap. Even careful handling could not prevent the eerie sense that the objects themselves resisted human intrusion. Subtle inscriptions revealed themselves along the bases of the ceremonial vessels, composed of symbols that did not match any known Xi'an scripts, but appeared deliberately coded. Tiny fragments of a dark, resinous substance clung to the carvings, defying chemical analysis and hinting at materials or rituals now lost to history. Teams working to stabilize or document the tomb encountered repeated misfortunes despite all precautions. Lanterns fell inexplicably, ropes snapped, and scaffolding shifted, sometimes narrowly missing the workers. Some noted a creeping unease that seemed tied to the tomb's layout, a sensation that human presence alone could disturb something ancient and vigilant within the jade walls. A subtle hum filled the stone and jade, lingering in the chambers long after work ended each day, hinting that the tomb was more than a silent repository of the past. Visitors, historians, and scientists alike left with a lingering impression that the jade itself watched them, measuring both curiosity and intrusion. As evening approached, shadows lengthened unnaturally along the jade walls, stretching in directions that defied both lantern placement and logic. Workers reported fleeting glimpses of figures that seemed to shimmer at the edges of vision, vanishing when directly observed. Instruments meant to record vibrations and air pressure detected subtle fluctuations that could not be attributed to natural causes, as though the tomb itself responded to human presence with a silent, deliberate awareness. The jade tomb of Xi'an seemed to hum with a quiet, inexorable awareness that no living hand could still, even when sealed and untouched. The mummy of the burning eyes. The Atacama Desert stretched endlessly, a barren expanse of jagged rocks and shifting sands that had claimed countless explorers and travelers over centuries. It was here among the desolate cliffs and hidden valleys that a team of Chilean archaeologists made a discovery that would haunt them forever. The excavation site was unremarkable at first glance, a shallow depression half buried by windblown sand. Yet beneath the soil lay a burial that seemed untouched by time. The mummy they uncovered was tightly wrapped, the linen bandages unusually smooth and meticulously preserved, showing no signs of decay beyond what centuries would naturally bring. Even the desert, relentless and harsh, appeared to have left it untouched. What drew immediate attention, however, were the eyes. When the bandages over the face were carefully removed, the eye sockets seemed to glow faintly, as if light emanated from within the dark hollows. Several team members insisted it was a trick of shadow or reflection, but the more they looked, the more the glow deepened, flickering almost like embers in a fire. One archaeologist, Miguel Alvarez, reportedly stepped back with a shiver running down his spine, muttering that it felt like the gaze was alive, weighing, judging, following. That night, the desert wind carried strange noises over the excavation camp, and some claimed they could hear whispers or footsteps on sand that was undisturbed. The atmosphere grew tense. Instruments began failing for no reason, thermometers and lights flickering in patterns that suggested interference, though no explanation could be found. Miguel, along with two others, reported dreams filled with burning eyes staring from the darkness, the hollow sockets seeming to pierce their minds. Even those who tried to dismiss the sensations felt an unexplained unease, a pressure in the chest that would not relent. At first, the team blamed fatigue and stress, but it soon became impossible to ignore. Accidents began occurring. A ladder holding one of the researchers broke unexpectedly, sending him tumbling into the sand below, with injuries that appeared severe yet curiously superficial. Tools were lost or shattered, and one storage tent mysteriously caught fire despite precautions. A sense of invisible eyes following every move of the team became a shared paranoia. Rumors spread among the staff that the mummy's eyes had never truly died, and that the glow was a warning, a remnant of an ancient force guarding the tomb. Yet no one could explain why this force had remained dormant for so long, only to awaken now, in the hands of people who sought knowledge rather than plunder. The excavation continued despite growing fears. The team recorded measurements, documented the wrappings, and took samples with meticulous care. Scholars visiting from Santiago University described the linen as extraordinarily fine, far superior to what would be expected from the era suggested by preliminary carbon dating. A faint, resin-like smell lingered around the burial, reminiscent of burnt wood or incense, though no traces could be found. Each day, the eyes seemed to glow brighter, almost impatiently, as if recognizing the intrusion and calculating some response. The desert nights were oppressive, the silence thickened by the unsettling sensation that they were no longer alone. Stories began to circulate of individuals seeing figures move just beyond the edge of the campfire's light, only to vanish when approached. A cat wandering near the tents was found dead, with no visible wounds, and some members claimed they could hear its meows echoing in the air even hours later. Anxiety among the team intensified, turning suspicion into mistrust. Friends whispered warnings that the mummy should be left untouched, that curiosity might awaken something that could not be restrained. Yet the compulsion to continue grew, driven by a mix of fear and fascination, a desire to understand what seemed impossible to comprehend. Several weeks into the excavation, a researcher suffered a sudden, unexplained cardiac arrest, his vital signs plummeting as the others watched helplessly. The death shocked the team, leaving the remainder reluctant to enter the tent where the mummy rested. Attempts to cover it again were met with resistance from the desert itself. Windstorms unexplainably tore at the protective coverings, as if the mummy's presence demanded attention. Communications with authorities in Santiago became strained, reports filled with frantic warnings and descriptions of phenomena that could not be rationally explained. Observers from outside the region noted that the glow appeared to intensify whenever someone approached, a subtle yet undeniable reaction that hinted at awareness beyond the mortal. The final incident occurred when Miguel Alvarez, the first to speak of the burning eyes, vanished during a solitary night watch. His tent was found empty, the flaps swinging as though moved by hands unseen. Sand patterns suggested he had stepped into the open desert, but no footprints led away, and no trace of him could be discovered, despite hours of searching. Panic gripped the remaining team members, and the decision was made to cover the mummy entirely and abandon the site. Even so, as they retreated, the glow persisted, faint yet unwavering, visible beneath layers of cloth and dirt, an unyielding witness to the intrusion. Those who survived carried the stories with them, a shared terror that lingered far beyond the desert. Some awoke screaming in the night, eyes wide, as though the gaze of the buried corpse had followed them home. Others reported hearing faint whispers in empty rooms, the echoes of unseen movements. Every mention of the excavation revived a chilling certainty. Some forces do not rest, and some gazes never close. The glow was gone from human sight, but no one dared believe it was truly gone. The grave of the nameless child. On a chill morning in November, a small team of archaeologists began digging at a hillside outside the town of Guanajuato, Mexico. The soil was loose and dry, crumbling easily under the first shovels, yet the shapes of stones beneath suggested a deliberate structure. There were no records of burials at this location, and local archives offered nothing to explain what might lie hidden under the earth. The quiet valley seemed indifferent to human curiosity, its wind whispering faintly through low shrubs as if warning the intruders away. The first shovel struck something solid. A fragment of carved stone emerged, worn and aged, but clearly part of a larger construct. Hands paused, gloves brushing the dust away, revealing the edge of a small sealed tomb. It was too small to house an adult, its proportions matching those of a child. The workers hesitated, sensing that this discovery was unusual, yet the compulsion to continue overtook any unease. The lid, decorated with faint, faded carvings, offered no name, no inscription, only an unsettling emptiness that hinted at anonymity across centuries. A cold draught seeped from the open ground, carrying a scent neither of soil nor decay, but something faintly sweet and metallic. It moved through the excavation, brushing faces and clothing, chilling the air despite the sun climbing overhead. Those near the tomb felt a subtle pressure, as if the small space contained more than bones and dust. Every sound, the scrape of trowels, the cough of a worker, the rustle of wind suddenly seemed amplified, echoing across the valley with an unnatural clarity that made the observers glance repeatedly over their shoulders. No records indicated that a child had been buried here. The region's colonial history was well documented, yet this grave appeared to exist outside time, unnoticed by any census, parish, or municipal record. Scholars noted that its construction, though simple, bore precise craftsmanship unusual for an unmarked burial. The stone was quarried from nearby hills, the placement deliberate, almost ceremonial, suggesting intent behind the secrecy. Questions rose like smoke in the minds of those who studied it. Why would a grave so carefully built be left nameless? One of the workers fell silent mid-sentence, his gaze fixed on the tomb. Moments later, a tremor ran through his hands, as if he had touched something far colder than stone. Others noticed small disturbances in the surrounding earth, patterns that did not match natural settling. Tools laid down in neat rows were found displaced, sometimes buried slightly beneath sand that had been smoothed hours before. Shadows lengthened oddly around the tomb, stretching in ways that defied the sun's position. Ancient burial practices in the region rarely left graves unmarked, and children were often interred with tokens of protection. This tomb had none. No figurines, no personal items, not even offerings of food or cloth. The absence weighed heavily on the minds of the team, creating an uneasy silence punctuated only by the steady sound of digging. It was as if the child buried here had been deliberately erased from memory, yet somehow preserved in a state of ominous presence that no explanation could fully address. Within hours, the consequences of disturbing the grave became undeniable. Workers reported headaches, nausea, and sudden vertigo. A small flame from a lantern extinguished inexplicably, leaving the immediate area in darkness. Even the more skeptical scholars could not ignore the chain of minor accidents, the strange coincidences that escalated as the day progressed. Whispers spread, rumors of curses and misfortune growing louder, though no one dared speak of what they truly feared, that the tomb itself might be alive in some incomprehensible sense. Why had no one noticed the grave for centuries? Attempts to trace local folklore offered nothing. Older residents remembered only barren hillside and wind. Archaeologists speculated on plague, famine, or undocumented tragedy, but no explanation satisfied the growing sense of dread. The more they tried to understand, the more layers of mystery seemed to unfold. Each new piece of observation displaced sand, whispered noises, inexplicable chills suggested that the nameless child's resting place was resistant to intrusion, as if the earth itself sought to protect what lay beneath. As night fell, the wind carried shadows across the tomb in patterns that mimicked the movements of those who had been present earlier. Every attempt to secure the site was met with subtle resistance. Small collapses of earth, shifting stones, and unexplained dampness that appeared only around the grave. Scholars and workers alike felt the oppressive weight of unseen attention, a sense that something watched, measured, and waited. The tomb's anonymity amplified the terror, leaving only questions and a growing certainty that curiosity had awakened forces beyond understanding. The presence remained, silent and patient, as no one dared linger after that night, as if waiting for another to disturb the unmarked ground. The chamber that should never have been opened. A network of tunnels carved into Cappadocia's soft volcanic stone concealed countless secrets beneath the rocky slopes, most of them long forgotten. Among these, a recently uncovered crypt drew the attention of local archaeologists, not for its size, but for its unusual location. The entrance was narrow, almost imperceptible, hidden behind a jagged overhang that cast a deep shadow across the path. Few would have noticed it if not for a subtle shift in the stones that suggested human intervention centuries ago. A narrow crack in the stone revealed the passage, enough for a single researcher to slip through with a lantern. The air smelled of damp earth and centuries-old dust, yet it carried an undercurrent of something metallic, faint but unmistakable. Every step into the darkness felt heavier than the last, the floor uneven and treacherous. Echoes of shifting rocks reverberated through the chamber, yet no source could be found, creating the sensation that the walls themselves were moving, alive, in some imperceptible way. The air inside was unusually still, almost suffocating. Thermometers showed no temperature anomalies, yet those who entered spoke of a sudden chill that seeped to their bones. Breath seemed louder than usual, amplified in a silence so complete that each exhale felt intrusive. A subtle pressure pressed against the chest of anyone near the entrance, and lights flickered with no electrical cause. The stillness was oppressive, as if the chamber itself was testing the limits of human presence. The walls bore inscriptions that seemed older than any recorded in the region. Symbols carved deep into the volcanic rock defied immediate translation, appearing at first random, then revealing patterns that repeated along the length of the corridor. Scholars examined the sequences, noting similarities to scripts found in other Anatolian ruins, yet with distortions that suggested intentional concealment of meaning. The carvings seemed designed to draw attention and simultaneously repel understanding, a puzzle left by hands long gone. As the team explored, torches flickered and instruments failed without explanation. Compasses spun in erratic circles, and cameras recorded only static in the chamber's deepest corners. One researcher stepped backward and felt the ground shift slightly beneath his feet, though no earthquake was detected. Attempts to map the tunnel were thwarted by sudden collapses of stone, subtle enough to seem natural, but frequent enough to alarm those inside. Each disruption reinforced a creeping belief that the chamber was resistant to human intrusion. Turkish authorities immediately restricted access after reports of missing personnel reached local offices. 7 researchers had entered the site over a span of weeks, and none returned. Official statements remained vague, citing hazardous conditions and the risk of cave-ins. Yet those familiar with the area whispered of a deeper danger, of chambers that should not be entered, and of phenomena that defied geological or scientific explanation. Journalists and historians were left with fragments of accounts, each suggesting that the crypt itself seemed to retaliate against curiosity. One member vanished without a trace, leaving only disturbed dust in a corner of the corridor where he had paused to examine a carving. No footprints, no indication of struggle, no plausible exit. The remaining team recoiled at the realization that the passage could conceal or consume without leaving evidence. Subsequent attempts to explore deeper were met with new hazards. Sudden gusts of wind from sealed corners, tremors in solid rock, and strange echoes that resembled human voices whispering warnings in an unrecognizable tongue. Outside observers documented the chamber's influence as if it were a force beyond comprehension. Satellite surveys detected minor shifts in the terrain over the weeks following the discovery. Local guides refused to approach the area, recounting old tales of tunnels where explorers vanished, never to be seen again. Researchers compiling reports noted that each attempt to study the site only increased risk, suggesting that the chamber's design or presence operated with deliberate intent. The deeper the intrusion, the greater the threat, creating a chain of events that no protocol could fully predict or contain. The entrance now remains blocked by heavy stones and reinforced earth, yet the mystery persists. Locals speak of faint lights moving within the hillside at night and soft sounds of movement where no human could be. The chamber endures as an enigma, its construction and consequences recorded only in fragmented accounts of those who dared approach it. Scholars debate its origin and purpose, but consensus eludes them, leaving only speculation and the unsettling certainty that some doors are meant to remain closed. The corridor lies empty once more, yet it waits, patient and unyielding, as if anticipating the next hand to pry at its secrets. The tomb of the shattered god, centuries before modern settlements, a temple in Anatolia, stood as a testament to a forgotten civilization, its stones carved with symbols that no longer held meaning. Beneath its collapsed roof, archaeologists discovered fragments of a colossal figure buried under centuries of rubble. The statue had once loomed over the temple floor, a guardian or deity whose presence commanded awe, yet now it lay in scattered pieces, broken and inert. Its absence from historical records made its rediscovery remarkable, but ominously so. The first shard emerged from the collapsed temple floor, a massive fragment of stone etched with intricate reliefs. Its surface bore faint traces of pigment, perhaps remnants of ceremonial paint, though centuries of decay had left it muted. Each fragment revealed the scale of the original figure. Even the smallest piece suggested a form larger than any human could fully comprehend. As labourers unearthed the stones, a sense of weight, not merely physical, seemed to press upon them, as if the fragments themselves carried the authority of the god they once embodied. Jagged edges and intricate engravings marked the stone, hinting at lost rituals and forgotten ceremonies. The fragments' alignment suggested intentional placement, though centuries of collapse had scattered them unpredictably. Scholars noted the subtle artistry, figures of worshippers, ritual symbols and abstract forms interwoven with the deity's visage. Every curve and line seemed designed to convey power, yet the fragment's current state distorted the message, leaving observers unsettled. Archaeologists carefully positioned the first fragment on a makeshift pedestal, intent on reconstructing the figure. Every movement was deliberate, calculated to preserve the integrity of the stone. Yet as the piece was set in place, small tremors shifted dust and loose debris around the chamber. Tools fell unexpectedly, ropes slipped from hands, and instruments malfunctioned without explanation. The pattern of disruption grew more pronounced with each subsequent fragment placed, as if the statue resisted being made whole again. A sudden tremor knocked one worker to the ground, and a fissure appeared in the floor near where the largest fragment rested. Panic swept through the excavation team, but no logical cause could be identified. Geologists examined the site and found no signs of natural instability. Observers recorded that each act of reconstruction was met with immediate, inexplicable consequences. The pattern suggested an intelligence behind the stone, a force that intervened whenever human hands attempted to restore the god's form. Each fragment moved brought further misfortune. Minor injuries escalated to severe accidents, some nearly fatal. A torch ignited unexpectedly, scorching one of the workers before extinguishing itself, leaving no trace of accelerant. Another team member slipped into a pit that had formed beneath the debris, emerging hours later, shaken and unable to explain the fall. Scholars and laborers began speaking in hushed tones, noting the coincidence of danger following any attempt at assembly. The tomb seemed to enforce its own rules, invisible yet absolute. According to scholars from Istanbul University, the artifacts resisted assembly, with historical parallels showing that sacred objects disturbed against custom often triggered misfortune. They emphasized the dangers of reconstruction and urged extreme caution. Local authorities restricted access, citing the repeated accidents, but reports continued to filter through, each more alarming than the last. Observers outside the excavation noted that even photographs and measurements of the fragments occasionally displayed anomalies, shadows that shifted independently, and faint impressions on film that could not be explained. After 7 team members vanished under mysterious circumstances, attempts to complete the statue were abandoned. Some vanished during excavation, while others were lost while trying to transport fragments for study. No bodies were recovered, and no signs of struggle remained. The temple, already fragile and ancient, now bore the reputation of being a site where human presence invited calamity. Every record emphasized the same warning. The fragments were not inert relics, but objects that seemed to resist human interference, responding violently to the desire to reassemble the god. The tomb remained sealed, fragments scattered, yet the force within was palpable. Scholars debated whether the destruction was symbolic or literal, whether the deity's power persisted in the stone itself. Locals avoided the site entirely, recounting whispered tales of a god that shattered in anger and would never tolerate reconstruction. Each account reinforced the sense that the statue, though broken, retained agency, a presence that demanded respect and caution. The fragments lie scattered, silent yet vigilant, as though awaiting the next hand daring enough to challenge the god's fractured will.